Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Hartman turns, gives up the middle, running free, first down, middle of the field, easy touchdown, Notre Dame. Jadarian Price, his first carry as a Notre Dame running back, goes up the middle and into the end zone for 19-yard touchdown. Back to the air on 1st and 10, lofts one inside the 10, the ball caught, touchdown! Jaden Greathouse.
Caleb, the empty backfield, throws over the middle. That's complete, and it's a touchdown to Dorian Singer. Touchdown USC, their first of the year. New set of downs as the ball is dropped. Caleb picks it up, trying to make something happen. Throws long, and it is complete. And at the 30, the 20, the 15, 10, 5, and touchdown USC, Taj Washington. Something out of nothing. It was a fumbled snap. Caleb went back. Most coaches will tell you to fall on the ball, not Caleb Williams, not Mr. Heisman Trophy. Picks it up and throws a touchdown pass. How do you do?
I don't know. I think, well, you're talking about, I think you kind of build a book of business about, hey, here's how we're going to play these guys. I think that repetitive nature. Sometimes you have to kind of diversify what you do each year because, people are zeroing in on what you're doing. So, yeah, I think having a repetitive opponent every single year certainly makes things easier in one regard. And then also you have to be ready to change a little bit because they know you and they're coming after you.
Welcome in to the very first episode of the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. That's DB right there.
What up? You sound so subdued.
Well, it's a little early for some people, so we gotta.
Not us.
I don't want to, startle anybody with my enthusiasm. That's something that people accuse me of all the time.
Yeah.
Being startlingly enthusiastic.
Listen. Look, the place looks fantastic. I kind of like the new speakers. It reminds me of I don't know if these are going to be like new beehives or what. They're kind of cool. It's a little techie, a little too much for me. Too technical for you, as my man Bill Callahan once uttered. But the place looks
good.
It's starting to come together.
Well, and obviously what DB's talking about, we're coming to you live from the about to reopen Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and live from the H&H Chevrolet studio over here. And it does. We got the new signage up already. The grand reopening tomorrow, right? That? I think that's correct.
I saw some of the new food items. That's all I was really curious
That
about.
is kind of our sweet spot right there. As I haven't checked out the new menu yet, but I'm excited to.
It's exciting.
I'm excited. See, there's my enthusiasm right there. You said it wasn't. I've got that Doc Sadler enthusiasm.
Hey, there's Doc. No, so it's weird, right? Because there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah,
and it happened in a hurry. And although there's a lot of strategic planning, I felt like the culmination and the timing, like we were gonna have to be on our A game.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, because there's just a lot of moving parts, right? The day parts, the show parts. ESPN Tri-Cities, welcome. If you hear anything kind of crazy, it's fairly normal. Don't worry about it.
You'll get used to us.
So welcome to all my salt of the earth people out there.
Hey, that's my line.
Yeah, right. Salt of the earth. I'm just gonna start saying that. I don't know, but I was kind of in my feels a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 4 a.m. I'm like, I'm tossing and turning a little bit. I'm trying to. We got to do some pregame hits. We have to record.
Mm-hmm.
I got my travel itinerary that I sent you yesterday or day before.
It looks terrible. If I'm just being honest with you, it looks awful.
It is. It really is. But see, I was kind of on it. So I called Coach Rule last week and I said, hey, I got to get ready for Grand Island too,
mm-hmm.
right? Because we play Grand Island Friday. And I want to make sure that we could build our practice schedule around the travel itinerary as best we could.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, hey, I'm getting in another workout with the coaches. The only thing I know for sure is wheels up at 1. Wheels up at 1 on 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I already know, right? They're not waiting for anybody.
Yeah.
They're like, you snooze, you lose, because those buses will leave the stadium at like noon. So I just started looking at the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, This is not. There's something to do every hour, right? So we'll start the pregame show. Will's up at 1, right? Then they have their deal. We'll have to do ours. Pregame show will start 4 hours before kick on Thursday. Did you see what time we get back to Lincoln on Thursday night?
Yeah, it looked like 2 a.m.
2 a.m. It's 2 a.m. and I'm still lonely. Is it 2 a.m., 3 a.m.?
It's 3 a.m.
Okay,
Matchbox
one
20?
of the what?
Well, you're
Matchbox 20.
You're gonna be.
Is that the group?
Yeah.
I've heard of them.
It's you're on.
Chances are, if you were up at 3 a.m., you were probably up at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
chances
are. You Johnny Mathis or somebody?
Well, I'm just saying you're going to be on Colorado time next week, so maybe you were just shifting into Mountain time, right?
So, and I know one of the I sent you the itinerary because before you'd say, "Hey, are you doing the show Friday?"
Yeah, I've totally forgot about Thursday, even where you're going to be in Minnesota.
Yeah, so Friday, buckle up, because not only will it be a post-game show, our first together, which is always good, because hopefully you find folks will think we do it better than anyone, but I'll literally be on about 2 hours sleep. Now, the good thing for you is that won't be the first time that's happened. I've done a show on similar amounts of sleep.
Yeah.
And then we got GI rolling into town, right?
At least you don't have to go to GI.
Yeah,
like that would be a really rough day.
I would listen. I would try to work it where I could have just stayed in Lincoln.
Right? Yeah, that would be a tough day. That'd be a bad day.
So I was like, man, I got to be at Nebraska City tomorrow afternoon. I have Big Red wrap up tomorrow night. So we'll spend a lot of time in the vehicle, right? And I was like, you know what? I was fresh off a great conversation on Friday night, Saturday with Coach Feakin, head basketball coach out at Gretna, who is
really good coach,
man,
really, really good coach,
but a significantly better guy, right? So
yeah, I don't know him as a dude, but really,
I'm just telling you, like, just kind of goes out of his way to say, hey, man, like, it's just cool how with what he's going through, trying to continue to whip cancer, dad of his own, trying to be a good husband. Like he thinks of me, right? So when I got up this morning, all I thought to myself was, I just remember that conversation. Hey, I'm proud of you. Tell your kid, whatever, right? And I was like, you know what? There's zero reason why I can't get up, get going, get this flipping thing in gear.
Yeah.
Glass half full, kick some tail with guys like Coach Feakin out there.
That's true.
So I went full bore. You want to talk about weird?
Yeah.
How about the T-shirt I'm rolling?
What are we rocking? We're on the Gretna.
Yeah.
There we go.
Believe that's my Coach Feek shirt.
There we go.
On the back under my West Side gear.
Well, yeah, of course.
So how about that? But it's about good people, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. I'm like, you know what? I feel motivated, and I did it without music.
Oh.
No shower music this morning.
Were you listening to like Coach Rule clips in the shower? I know you do that sometimes.
Why are you telling all my secrets?
You said on the pod before.
Oh shoot, yeah. So no, I didn't. I didn't. No music.
You in a good mood or what?
Yeah, I'm in a good mood, Coach. So I'm ready to go, man. Let's get it. I'm excited for a new show.
Listen, I'm excited as well. I'm excited. We're on ESPN Omaha. We're on ESPN Tri-Cities, as you mentioned. So you can catch us the entire state, basically.
Woo-hoo!
We got you covered.
Yeah.
From Omaha to, I don't know, what's on the west side of the state. I don't really know anything past
North Platte.
Scotts Bluff's out there.
Scotts Bluff.
I know we got Kearney and Grand Island
Kearney.
and Hastings. Those are kind of in the middle, though. When you call Kearney and
so yeah,
guys, Western Nebraska, they get a little cranky.
Because you ever seen Verzo Pissed?
Yeah, that's central. Nebraska.
Grand Island is central Nebraska. Stop calling that Western Nebraska, people.
Exactly. So I know my central Nebraska city is a little bit better. My Western Nebraska cities, I don't get out to that part of the state.
I do, and I love it. So I'm excited.
No, I'm thrilled to be on the air. They can hear us every morning from 7 to 10. I'm super excited about it.
Sash, are we the lead into the Doug and Daddy show? Because I do that show sometimes as a guest.
Yeah.
Those guys are hilarious.
Are they? Oh, I'm going to have to check them out.
Yeah.
Anybody that calls himself Daddy on the air, I'm just curious. I'm just interested what's happening there, you know?
Yeah, it's yeah, I did a hit with them on Friday.
I assume
so-
that's not his given Christian name.
not his government.
Not
Doug!
No, Doug is probably his real name.
Oh, it's
I meant
cool.
more daddy. Is not
Mr. Duda. Duda.
Duda. There we go.
So it's cool, man. I'm ready to go. So welcome.
I am excited. A lot of stuff kind of going on.
Yeah.
Not just with you, but sports wise in general.
Big weekend cuts. I think NFL you got it
cuts yeah.
Tuesday. They moved your guy. Were you disappointed? Did you shed a tear
for
over
Trey
one
Lance?
Trace and Lance?
I didn't. I thought they should hang on to him for the year because apparently Kyle Shanahan just likes to get quarterbacks hurt. That's a thing that he does quite a bit. And so I was like, maybe we just hold on to the quarterback that's still on a rookie deal. Like maybe we already paid him the roster bonus. Maybe we just hold on to him.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a terrible idea, but no. 4th round pick, more important because, we can deal with Josh Johnson in another NFC championship game. It'll be fine.
How about Dallas making moves?
Yeah. I don't really get it for Dallas.
I do.
Just you don't like Dak? You don't trust Dak? What?
I don't think anybody trusts Dak, but I do like Dallas. Unfortunately, saying that out loud,
I think their roster's good.
I like them this year.
Yeah.
And listen, if you watch any preseason, I'm a junkie, and I do.
Yeah.
Like watching Greer run around and just act like he was playing a video game.
Yeah.
Was fun. But listen, let Lance develop. He's still on a rookie deal.
Yeah. So I understood why other teams would want him. Dallas specifically didn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me because I just wonder, how many reps is he actually going to get in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
Like, how useful is
About
that?
as many as he was getting in
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
And so that's if I were a bad team, I would have gone after him just to get him out there and get reps because, people were saying, oh, he's a bust, whatever. It's like, we don't know if he's a bust. The dude has hardly played any football, not just in the NFL, just ever. He played one year at NDSU. He has played 4 NFL games. I have no idea if he's any good at football or not.
I know. But I think if you're the Niners, you get the getting's good. You don't let him walk.
Is as bad as the getting has been though.
Yeah, but I mean, and I get the whole three round the first round picks, right? And
I don't even mind that. I really don't.
Yeah, so you got value for him.
Yeah.
You got value. You got a 4th round pick.
Here, I guess my question is
don't overthink it.
Well, that seems really unlikely that I'm not going to overthink something, DB. That's kind of what I do.
I think very deeply.
Well, I don't know about deeply, but too much for sure.
Yeah.
I just wonder.
Welcome into the Over Analytical Show with Ravi Lulla.
Welcome into my own personal neuroses.
Wait a minute. Where's my thesaurus when I need one? Did you say necrosis? Is that when you don't get blood flow? What is
neurosis?
Oh, my bad. Sorry about that.
It's like when you're neurotic, It's
yeah, Sodders.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike
yeah,
Sauter.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it.
He'll be on Fridays. We'll talk to him.
Dude, my man was going ham Friday night.
Dude, you guys, I thought you might fight each other a little bit.
Oh, on Friday?
Yeah.
So he and we can do that.
Yeah.
He has these moments,
Yeah,
right?
He's a little wound up.
Where he brings other sentiments to his segment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know the backstory, so it just comes across as
being a little whiny.
Yeah, or angry or whatever, right? Yeah. So I'm like, hey, man, let's just keep it pushing. I know some probably at one point told you that Vermas was a better prospect than Mooberry, but hey, listen, man, it's okay if you think differently.
I was just hoping you'd throw me out there because I've been on the Pierce Mooberry train for a while.
Yeah.
And obviously we were watching the Miller North game on Thursday. Really need that dude to get any offensive touches.
Hey, so
that would be terrific.
Is it just me, or have you always been into high school, or you're just ramping up now that you're around it all the time?
So,
because I feel like you're out and about a lot now in just a short amount of time.
So I'm out and about now more than I have been in the last couple of years. I've always really enjoyed high school football. Usually I'd go to like Miller North games or whatever, just because
that's unfortunate.
Well, listen, those are my guys.
Listen, it's your alma mater too.
I appreciate, and I got a buddy on staff and stuff. So,
oh, do you?
Yeah, you know Jermaine.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah. Hey, good dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to high school with him. We graduated. So we see each other all the time.
Yeah. He looks like he's about 14 now.
Yeah, he still looks real young.
Seriously.
He's my age.
I get the whole don't crack thing, but that's a whole nother
He's
level.
taking it to another. Yeah, he's taking it to
whole nother level.
taking it to another level.
Super smooth skin. I said, you must get a lot of H2O, high quality.
Maybe that's my problem. I'm over here. None of these are H2O.
Dude. So this is club soda.
That's closer to water than what I'm working with.
Well, I
here.
started out as water, but I drank it on the way over, even though it's only a 4-minute drive.
Well, look, good for you. Staying hydrated in the morning.
Bro, like I got to do something. I am totally about preventative measures, so I'm trying to take care of my body.
Yeah.
This week because it is sleep will be hard to come by, and I'm gonna try not to be irritable. I'm naturally high on life.
Yeah,
but this gonna test your boy. So I got my T-shirt on, man.
You got to get those like emergency packs and stuff.
Do those work?
I feel like they do a little bit when you're kind of running yourself ragged a little bit.
Plus, it's game week.
Yeah,
right. Like I'm pumped.
I'm excited. I mean,
my guy Q got his number 6 back because I listen. I didn't want to have to see Quentin Newsom go nuclear. He would have been livid.
He'd have lost it.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you remember in the spring, he's like, "I want my 6 back."
Right there. Oh, we have Quentin Newsom, Ty Robinson,
and the surprise, Deshaun Singleton.
Well, surprise to some. I don't know if it was a surprise to you.
He got his 8 back.
That's your guy.
Yeah, it is. Now, but how about the emergence of my other guy, Kobe Bretz, who I about thought, if you'd asked me this 3 weeks ago, I was like, yeah, he's going to be on his way out.
Yeah, and now he's what, on the 2
working with the top units. So good on that secondary and good on those single digit guys. The Ty Robinson, I started to come around on late.
Okay.
Because I didn't really think of him
as one of those guys.
Yeah, and I think it maybe was Andrew that said, hey, how about Ty Robinson? And I was like, oh, okay. I'm kind of vibing. I think we both agreed on Q.
Yeah.
But the other two were
Sean's kind of out of nowhere a little bit.
Yeah.
Although I was thinking about him a lot since when did we record the last podcast? Wednesday. So after that podcast, we were in the Hurrdat offices over at HQ.
Yep. Over at headquarters, which is about another 4 minutes away. I'm liking this little triangle, man.
I need to move closer to our little
try going Nebraska City, Lincoln, back.
Yeah,
Lincoln back.
You drive too much.
Yeah, man.
You drive too much.
I looked at my atlas. It's 29,000 miles.
Oof. That's rough. No, I was thinking a lot about Deshaun Singleton though, because after the podcast where we were talking about putting guys in positions to succeed and kind of the way
that was a really good.
I was really, really happy with that conversation,
especially for me catching you off guard because I didn't know where that was going to go either.
I didn't either. Yeah,
when I was like, "Oh, Jeff Sims," and you're like, "Oh,"
because we were talking about basketball.
I didn't think well, I just was talking about like, can you be somebody
that you've never been before,
that you haven't been in a different environment?
And Jeff Sims, if Nebraska is going to be good, is going to have to be that. So I would encourage you. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. Go listen to the Dish and Ish pod that we did this week. But after that podcast, kind of talking about development, we were talking about Deshaun Singleton, who physically, height, weight, measurables is everything you could ask for out of a football player at just about any position. Pick a position, 6'3", 200 pounds. That's going to play just about anywhere.
10'6", 10'7", standing broad jumper.
Incredible explosiveness.
Vertical.
That is an athlete that you kind of dream about as a football coach, but really had a hard time moving like an effective football player
100%.
Prior to this year. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Coach Rule says he goes from a guy that's on to 2 deep to maybe one of our best players. And so I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that transformation. And then I'm starting to think about some of the guys that Matt Rule has been recruiting. You're thinking about the guys with the physical profiles, the guys that are running, your 10, 5, 40 or 100 meters dashes or whatever.
Isn't it weird how you put it against who's actually playing?
Yes,
because they're not those guys.
It's the proof of concept that you're looking at, though, right? In your mind, and we can maybe get into this in the next segment too. Does Deshaun Singleton kind of provide a proof of concept for some of the guys that Rule's recruiting?
Maybe.
Because
I mean, I could see that from a development standpoint.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's the X factor here, right? Is okay, you can run so fast, you can jump so high, and you've got this physical profile. Can you open your hips up? Can you move in a way that makes you effective at football?
How about just football IQ?
Sure. And that's the hardest part to teach, I think.
Mm-hmm. But that seems to be what they're rolling with. They want guys that love football. I think that's first and foremost.
And if they can consistently turn guys into that.
You know what? You know why I think that's number one?
Why is that?
Because if you love what you're doing, you'll make sacrifices. And this is kind of a sacrifice kind of staff. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. We may have you move positions. You may be spending some time with development.
Yeah.
But if you love it and you love us, right? Rep 1, I got your 6, the whole night. Then you'll love the process
of getting better
because you just fall in love with what it is, right? If you love your wife, she can stretch you and take you places that other people can't, right? Like,
and you'll get through challenges that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, right. But if the relationship, if there's no real love, it's like,
pretty easy
I really
to bail.
Want to do this for this person.
It's pretty easy to bail.
So that's why I like all the preventative measures that I felt like Trev and that administrative department were taking with like what they wanted to put in the locker room and what you want to put in the new facility and how you want to make it more like home and how he diversified the staff and how Coach Rule is big into what the kids are eating and make sure that it's regional and you don't feel isolated because you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there's still some things that you can relate to and getting to know your brothers and all that. Like if you can make it feel like home, some people don't want to leave home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the 30-year-old still putting his name on the Kool-Aid. Got the masking tape on the juice. That's my Seneca.
That sounds like a really specific example.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's get to Gary on the Warhorse hotline. Gary, you got about a minute and a half for us. What's going on, man?
Gary, what's up, buddy? Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I just wanted to start off saying that it was one heck of a very nice article about from Tom Shadle to you and about your son.
Oh, thank you. That's a lot easier to do than it was to read. I can tell you that.
A beautiful article, and your dad was in an era that I was in when I was at Benson in '75, and had the utmost respect for your father. So just know that this article was great to read.
Yeah, Gary, I appreciate that.
If you don't mind your son getting graduation presents from strangers. Give him one of those decks of Uno cards. Hey.
I appreciate it, Gary. You'll probably beat me again. So now he sends and retweets all these Uno stories that happen to be extremely prevalent on the social media. That's great. That's great.
Gary, we appreciate the call. If you're not familiar, Tom Chattel wrote a story it came out on Friday, right?
Yeah, Thursday and Friday. I think the digital, I'm still understanding the difference between digital and print.
Well, digital's on the internet, print is an actual
Well, I understand the difference between the two. Okay. I'm talking about when
when they come out.
See, it's too early for that.
Well, you asked me what the difference was. I was trying to help.
I didn't know. I was trying to be like the whole release deal. Because you know who was upset was my mom.
Oh, why is that?
It wasn't in the paper when she wanted it on Thursday.
Oh, okay. So it came out Friday, so you had to go out and get some papers?
Yeah, well, yeah, we get several.
Listen, you got to keep Mama Benning happy.
You're not kidding. Do you read the article? She doesn't play. He brought up a couple of things that we can get to in the next segment. He brought up Benson.
He did bring up Benson.
And we talked about high school.
And I do want to talk about that. We'll have all that and more coming up next on the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
We'll be right back in 5 minutes. We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Yeah, we're going to play a lot of receivers. I mean, Isaiah, you saw the explosive nature that he has last year early on in the season when he played. So, to me, Isaiah's always been a starter for us, would be a starter. He, had some soft tissue stuff at the end of the spring, so they kind of held him back. But he's had a really good camp, great hands, smart, tough, fast. So excited about Isaiah. And then Alex, was not my intention usually when I have scholarships to give it to a senior who's put their time in, but you just can't deny what he's done. I mean, he's made one-handed catches, acrobatic catches. I mean, he's been dynamic all camp. And so, he's a starter for us, and I think we'll play really well.
Welcome back.
Oh, I kind of like the new music.
We made it through one segment. That's something. Here on the
progress, baby.
The Damon Benning Show
That's
with
progress.
Ravi Lulla. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi Lulla. Want to set up the show for you here real quick. And we are, in just about a half hour, going to talk to our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald.
Sammy Mac.
And then toward the end of the show, 9:45, we will. Are we going?
Yes, Sam.
You're going everywhere this week.
Whoa.
We will be talking to the college football professor, Adam McClintock of Matrix Analytical. Really excited to talk to him. Later this week, we'll get to our predictions. We'll do Nebraska predictions. I'm trying to
want to save that for Thursday?
Yeah, save it for Thursday. We'll do it game day.
Okay.
And then either Thursday or Friday, we'll do our college football playoff predictions heading into the official start.
It's still 4 this year, man. You know I don't follow the sport a whole lot. We're still at 4 this year, right? Before we go to 12.
Yes, we were at 4.
Okay.
One more year at least.
Okay, hold
at
on
4.
for one more year. Shane, on Thursday, when I'm not here, make sure that you get me up early because it could be a problem when I'm on my own.
You gotta. Does he send you like a wake up call, like an old school hotel?
Well, he is a random texter with the lineups and what's going to be on, so you just never know.
And the clips, the audio clips.
Yeah,
gotta love it.
Hey, so I got to get you to be able to take a picture a little bit better, and just coming from the guy who has rocking the Android, not a great picture taker, but Liquid. When the glare is on the monitor, I can't read. So, like, you may want to put that in like black and white, or work with your paint settings when you send the picture, because I got a big glare with all the roll clips.
It's true. Yeah, it's it can be a little tough to see.
Yeah,
I mostly am just guessing when I tell them what to play, but it's fine.
Dude, it's bad. Sometimes I have to ask the kids around the house hey, can you read that for me? What does that say?
Well, speaking of some of the kids around your house, one Caleb Benning. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Pretty good football player.
Apparently everybody else is. I'm over kind of beating this dead horse. But
well, we don't have to get into Caleb too much. Obviously, he had a really great game in your opener against Prep.
Oh, we could get into it. I mean, I talk about other people's kids. It's fine.
I mean, you guys, I'm trying to figure out, and listen, it's a week 1 overreaction probably, right? I'm trying to figure out who it means more for in terms of what I know about teams, right? Does it mean I know more about Westside? Does it mean I know more about Creighton Prep? Or wild card, does it mean I know a little bit more about Bellevue West, right? Because we saw in week 0, Creighton Prep play Bellevue West really closely.
You were right next to me.
28-10, right? But that was a game, or 2014, whatever it was. I don't know, 2010.
27-14, I think.
It ended up
Bellevue West punched the one in.
That was a game until
real late,
the very end. Like Prep had a drive about halfway through the fourth quarter that could have given them the lead. So that was we were like, okay, is Bellevue West maybe not as far along as we thought? Is Creighton Prep further along than we thought? I thought the game against Westside this week was going to tell me, and it told me, as did the Bellevue West game against Omaha North. Right. I think what we
still watching that, by the way.
I think what we saw in week 0 was a combination of a couple things, but mostly maybe Bellevue West isn't as far along as we thought. Is that a fair takeaway from 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm not sure, and I can't speak on what's going on within the program, but that's I don't think that's the team right now, obviously, that they want to be, and I don't think it's the team that
a lot of people thought. Well, including Sauter, right? He said Westside and Bellevue West, and then everybody else.
Yeah,
right.
Which I never agreed with. But that's not an indictment on
Bellevue West. That's just,
or Sauter, right?
Yes.
I just know the personnel.
Yeah.
Right. Even most people's high school too. Like I just kind of know what we're dealing with.
Right. And so what we saw in your game what I saw the first half of, because I'm gonna be honest, I pieced out at halftime. Because it was 45-7 at halftime.
Yeah.
I was like, I think I've seen enough here. And I had.
And I think I told you before, maybe I told somebody, if we get off to a good start, look out.
Yeah. And
because we're typically with this group, we have been slow starters.
So I said 2 things because Andrew was at the game with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said,
I saw you guys bebopping in the end zone.
We were going back and forth, trying to get good angles on stuff. He was getting footage for Sauter because Sauter was out at Columbus Lakeview.
He's good in public, isn't he?
Yeah.
He could talk to anybody.
He's gonna like run for mayor someday of some town. I bet. Like he's just kind of like he's going over there talking to Tristan Alvano, and
it was good to see Jalen and Tristan.
It was, yeah. So first series of the game, I told him two things. As your guy Ross is just running through these wide open holes.
That started on the opening kickoff when Prep's fullback got stoned on the return, and I was like, "Ooh, we're out. We're hitting. Like it's a very physical team."
Right. So there were two things I said on between their first possession and your first possession. I said, one, this is going to be a bloodbath because I saw the holes you guys were opening up, and that first series was just run. And it was, I don't want to say effortless because I know you guys work hard, right? But it looked effortless from the outside looking in, right? And so I was like, this might go badly for Prep. And then the other thing I said, and I was like, it's going to make DB mad, is Prep's going to get them on one of those ball fake bootlegs. And that's the only touchdown they scored was on Caniglio with that ball fake bootleg. And you guys actually played it pretty well.
We did.
Because you cut him off from the run.
Yeah.
And the coverage wasn't bad. He still found a guy in the end zone on a pretty good throw. It
was.
But those were the two things. I was really proud of myself because I said that within the first 2 minutes of the game. I was like, this is not going well for Prep.
Very good boot team.
I was like, it's not going to go well for Prep, and they're going to get him on one of the boots. Obviously you're in it. How you had to be happy with how you guys played, I assume.
Yeah, we were pumped, right? We wanted to, because Prep hadn't given up big plays, the week before. It was workmanlike, and so we weren't sure
against a team that can gash you a little bit at Bellevue.
Yeah,
West.
it has a lot of big play potential. So I felt good that we were able to do something in our opener,
right?
That an athletic, talented group
team like
Bellevue West wasn't. But then we won explosive plays, but I was most happy with our physicality, right? Like we hit.
You guys were popping a little bit,
and it's not just kind of a flash and dash kind of thing, and we didn't have one receiver with more than one catch.
Yeah.
So
I guess I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to be unselfish in this offense.
Because Cotton had a long touchdown catch.
Yeah.
Caleb had like a 30-yarder, 27-yarder, something like that. That's interesting that nobody had more than one catch.
Nobody had more than one catch.
That's
six. I think 6 of 8, maybe, or something like that.
And Rezac ran the ball well.
He's unbelievable.
I texted you this. The progression he's made, and we're going to talk about more high school teams other than West Side, but the progression that he made as a passer, because he's always been a good athlete, right? The progression he made as a passer from the beginning of his sophomore year that you guys lost to Gretna?
Yeah.
So from the beginning of his sophomore year until now is astonishing to me.
It's a 3-year starter.
He throws a really pretty ball now.
Yeah, he's
like genuinely a really good football now.
And that's his offense.
Whereas before, I was like, yeah, he's a good athlete. If you have to trust him to throw the ball, I don't know how I feel. Because I remember thinking in that Gretna State Championship game when Flores was a junior and Rezac was a sophomore, I'm thinking, and this is exactly how it played out, right? I go, at some point, Flores is going to make a throw that nobody else in the state can make, and that's going to cost Westside the game. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think Rezac had that in him at the time, and he probably didn't at the time, right? I think he does now.
And it's a big boy offense, right?
It is.
Go misdirection, zone, outside zone.
It's not simple.
We can run, QB run game is tough. We RPO.
Yeah, well, Rezac had 2 rushing touchdowns as well.
He's I think that my favorite thing about him is he's a winner. Mm-hmm. Like, I get that. Like I've said it for 2 years. Yeah. If I got a game to win,
you want him.
I'm riding with A-Train. But the other thing is his composure.
Yeah.
He's just always in control.
Unflappable.
Yeah. We got a lot of high school to get to.
A lot more high school to get to. We will get to that next. We will get to Sam McKewon at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi Lulla. More of the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla coming up next.
The show will be back in 4 minutes. show will be back in 3 minutes. The show will be back in 2 minutes. The show will be back in 1 minute. The show will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
I think really two things. Just making sure we were under the lights again, making sure that our substitutions and all those things that can show up on the first game were as clean as possible. Got some really good work. The guys were really physical. So we worked on our football as well. And I think the biggest thing I told the team is, Coach Paterno used to always tell us you make your biggest jump from game 1 to game 2. I think a lot of old coaches say that. So we don't want to try to do that after next week. We treated last night like a game so we could see, hey, where are we deficient? What do we need to improve upon? You can sometimes get to this last week and want to hurry up and get to the game, but we have to maximize every minute to improve.
Welcome back to the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla here on a Monday. It is game week. Can't wait to get into some actual football. We've heard enough. I mean, listen, I love listening to Coach Rule as much as anybody.
Almost
as much as anybody. I don't listen in the shower, so.
It was 3 or 4 days. Let's not make mountains out of molehills.
I thought you were going to say it was one time, and you're like, it was 3 or 4 times, which means it was at least 6.
Day after day after day.
We are brought to you by the Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. Go to the Warhorse Sportsbook in Lincoln, Nebraska to place your bets in person. It's the only casino in Nebraska where sports bets can be placed. Must be placed in person at the Warhorse Sportsbook. Plenty of kiosks, plenty of sportsbook tellers to take your wagers, or you can build your wagers on the app and then go to the casino and place your wagers there with the QR code, the Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Wanted to get back into some high school stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Because your guys was one kind of blowout, right? But we had another kind of blowout over the week as well. And listen, were there more competitive games to talk about? Absolutely.
And we can get to them rapid fire if you want.
Sure, we'll get to that. I mean, Millard West, Millard South was.
I was pretty. Listen, I like Millard West. I kind of like them. Them and Pepe were my dark horse.
Yeah.
That score, because I know Millard South is fantastic up front.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not speculating there. Do I know about young quarterback play and how Tamala's going to do? No.
Replacing Kozel, yeah.
I don't. But I do know they're fantastic up front. To see Millard West with a chance to win that bad boy late, oh, man, that's all I need to know about Millard West. And they got a big one coming up against Omaha North.
They do, because Omaha North, as we mentioned earlier, knocked off Bellevue West in, kind of resounding fashion, 25-7. Bellevue West without Isaiah McMorris couldn't ever really get going.
And so far, Champ Davis is the best player on the field, and he plays for Omaha North.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still parsing. I like to get in. Like, I want to see Glassman. I want to see
for sure
Donovan Jones and stuff. But Bellevue West's inability to get vertical in the passing game
is a little bit shocking.
It is a little surprising
because that's the one thing I thought I could count on.
Yeah.
From Bellevue West.
And I thought that they like their young secondary, but they're giving up some chunk plays.
They are. It's going to be really interesting when they play, because Omaha North, again, kind of.
It's not how you'd expect them to play, right? They open up with weak side blast and they go for 70-some, and you're like, that's North.
Right.
But then
the vertical stuff is
vertical stuff.
You expect them to beat you at the point of attack, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where Omaha North was. You got Tyson Terry out there.
Hey, listen, real deal.
That dude's a monster.
And people kind of hated on him last year, and I kept saying he's learning to play both ways.
Yeah.
People don't understand how hard that is.
Yeah.
It's like you don't just get out of bed and dominate the Metro. Like,
especially on both sides of the ball,
right? And I'm like,
because they're totally different skill sets. Like physically,
it's a mental thing.
Yes,
and you have to train to play 48 minutes,
which not very many people can do at a really high level consistently.
So far,
especially in the trenches, like that's so physically demanding.
So far, and I'm only through like 3/4 of that game. He's North's physicality. Especially in the opener.
Yeah.
I knew that they were physical. I don't know what to. I have to wait, right? We play Bellevue West in a couple weeks. We got Grand Island first, so I'm kind of just feeling my way along here with Bell West. But I do know there are some scores that I know enough about that surprise Millard West and how North beat Bellevue West are definite so far.
Yeah,
eye openers.
A couple of the biggest surprises so far this year. The one that I wanted to talk about, though, was the Lincoln North Star Benson game. Yeah. And it's not really the game itself that I want to talk about, right? But that, if you're not familiar, Lincoln North Star ends up beating Benson 93-0. And I don't know, when I sit and see that score, and I saw some of the highlights, obviously I didn't watch that live. I imagine I'm not going to watch Benson live all year. For obvious reasons, right? But when you see that score, there's a couple things that come to mind here. And I've, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Benson's only got like 28 guys.
Yeah. I've seen varying numbers,
but it's low.
Yeah,
it is a really low Class A number for sure. Don't have a ton of talent, obviously don't have a ton of depth. And I guess when I see a score like that, which is not very often because that's a Class A record for points in a game, I just sit there and I think something had to have gone wrong. And I don't mean on the football field, right? Like, and you can speak to this a little better than I can because
I've been there.
I've only coached I only coached in high school 1 year, right? When I was coaching in college, to me, all bets were off. Yeah. All right. Everybody's on scholarship. Everybody recruited these guys. if you get blown out and my guys are still blowing you out, like I'll put subs in, but I'm not going to tell my subs not to play. Right. But college is a different animal that way. In high school, that score makes me uncomfortable.
It hurts me. I got to tell you, man, I got a ton of thoughts, and I know we're going to be up against it, but I've been there.
Yeah.
Right. I remember, and I went 0-27, right? Winless.
Yeah.
And that was everybody's punchline. Oh man, this guy. And what I had to continue to tell myself, or the staff that hung in there, and our kids is that we're trending in the right direction, because at some point it's not just about the game.
Right.
Because of those 27 games, there are only 2 that I felt like we actually had a chance to win before we started. That was Bryan, and they beat us late. Their quarterback had a fantastic run at our place. They stayed and celebrated on our field, and I mean, I get it. And we went to Lincoln and played at Beach. We played Lincoln High, and I felt like we had a chance to win that game. Every other game, South, Benson, I felt like we just didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
All right. We finished that season with 19 guys. Then I had 26. My last year, I think we finished with 31. And so we were looking for small victories, right?
Yeah.
Where we would be out in the community, or we got our own film room, or we cleaned up the visiting locker room, or we mowed the grass we painted the field. We got buses. We got, we bought new equipment with quote unquote donor money. And so it breaks my heart to see those things happen, because with the student assignment plan and open enrollment and tax-based school districts, people have to want to come to your school. But it's not just that per se. It's the ability to have patience with things that are outside the end game, the wins and losses. And sometimes kids just don't want that. And
it's hard when you're that age.
It really is.
It's hard to see past.
It really is
getting your head beat in.
But I would just caution folks. Now, whether Benson should play a varsity schedule, I don't believe they should.
Right.
But I'm very cautious to not pull the plug on that sports program, because you just don't get it back.
Right.
And you got to move in small incremental steps and be patient. You want to get to George?
Yeah, let's get to George on the Warhorse hotline here. George, what do you got for us? George, you there?
I'm here, bro. How are you?
Good morning, George. How are you?
Good morning. First of all, DB, congratulations on your mighty victory over my junior Jays. That hurt me bad.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. I told you I cheer for Coach Yonk and that staff, Munson, anytime that they're not playing us. He's a great man.
No, that was a performance that I have not seen from Westside against Prep. I mean, I guess it's becoming regular routine anymore. That even hurts me more.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this whole Benson thing. I've been listening and I've been reading about this thing. And I think, I've been trying to say this for about the last 3-4 years, Damon.
Oh yes, you have.
The state needs to wake up, and they need to get rid of census-based classification as the primary way of determining who's Class A, B, or C. You're talking about a Class A high school with 30 kids in their football program.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do that. And I think, in my opinion, what hurts me more than anything is what you're doing is, as we talked about, you're in college. That's different. You're an adult. You're going to school. You're getting paid. Most of the guys are getting paid in terms of school, board and rooms, tuition. I get it. Those are adults. But when the purpose of high school, I thought it's, I know it's supposed to teach us life lessons, but it's also supposed to be competitive. And, I'm not going to say the word fair, but there needs to be some competitive balance. And when you have systems like this, the incompetitive balance, adults need to wake up and they need to say enough is enough. I mean, you look at Bryan High girls basketball. I don't think they finished the varsity high school season last year, quote unquote Class A. So I think we've got to end this madness of saying that if you got X number of kids, you're probably saying we got to start looking at other factors just besides the number of kids, because kids are getting mentally and physically destroyed. Would you want to be on the Benson team?
No, I
understand.
No,
93-0.
I've been there, babe. I know. I know, George. We need to give you more time. If you want to call us back, you can, because I'm on to this census-based deal. So if you want to talk to us after Sam McKewon, that'd be great, or around 9, because we're going to get back to the whole high school scene here, but before the day's over, after we get into Nebraska. I promise you that.
I'll call you at 9.
Appreciate it, George.
We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. You know, that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going?
Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Welcome back to the show, the Damon Benning Show with Robbie Lulla here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities out in central Nebraska. We're joined now by our friend Sam McKewon, the sports editor for the Omaha World Herald. Sam, it is game week. How do you feel?
I feel much better than when it's not game week. I'm ready.
Did you like Ravi's geographical lesson? We Tri-Cities, central Nebraska. How about that?
That's right. Yes, the Tri-Cities. I used to live in one of them out in Grand Island. And yes, it's called the Tri-Cities. It's a unique use of the word city. I love all those places though. And I've always enjoyed central Nebraska. It's so the people out there just have such passion for not only living out there, but for Husker sports. And I've always, and that may have something to do with Coach Osborne being from there, but it's always been really cool to get out there and just to know those people.
To be fair, it's also a unique term of the use of the term island.
I didn't hear that question. Sorry.
He said it's a unique use of the term island as well.
It is, yeah. So, that's related to the area, right? I guess what is it? South of Grand Island, yeah, where they thought it was kind of an island because of the Flat River. Yeah, neat. Great town, Grand Island. Love it. Love Grand Island. Love Kearney. Love Hastings. Love them all.
Sam, how'd you spend your Friday night? There are a lot of good matchups to pay attention to.
We spent our Friday night in Kansas City. We went down to the Chiefs game on Saturday, and so we hung out in KC. I followed along on social media in the evening. I think the largest surprise, honestly, was the margin of your team's win over Prep. I mean, that Prep's never really been done like that ever, and so that was surprising. And then Omaha North dominating Bell West. I mean, that wasn't like a super tight game. I mean, that was a game that Omaha North controlled from start to finish. Very impressed there. And it looks like Elkhorn South, again, a good team. Those three teams are up there. WS obviously has some things to work through. I mean, they weren't great in game one, and to score 7 points in game two. Not that Omaha North doesn't have a good defense, but that's obviously not what WS wants to do. And so, back to the drawing board there, and we'll see where things go from here. I mean, Papio looks pretty good.
Yeah,
some other teams do too. So, I think it's going to be a fun year. But obviously, I mean, West Side is probably out in front of everyone, and that's you guys are gonna be the team that everybody's trying to go after now. You beat a team like that right away, you guys will have to be on guard all season for everybody's best shot.
It's interesting.
Which is probably what you'll get.
It's interesting too, and I'm already I'm a big Mike Patterson guy just because of how much he covers high school and all sports, right? He's everywhere, and he's very low key, and he let me know he's talking about Caleb, and so he hadn't seen a performance like that in just a quarter of a half and all impact in all phases of the game. And in a while. I don't know if he said ever, but he certainly said in a while. And the thing that I thought about that as you're talking through the deal, not just Caleb specific, but the ability to play all three phases now with how advanced high school has become. Like you can't be like one dimensional, even within your certain offense, right? You can't just be a vertical team. You can't just be ball control. You can't it's just, you have to be able to win special teams. You have to have a good secondary. It's hard to win now in Class A, in my opinion, over a long stretch of time without being fairly complete.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's very true. Certainly, years and years ago, if you had a great running game, you were going to be in every game. I mean, that was just the case. And, my memory goes back probably to the mid '80s, and then all the way through, since then. And yeah, you're going to have to be able to throw the ball. You're going to have to run it. You're going to have to be able to stop the run, stop the pass. Most good teams have a good kicker. Not all of them do. Most good teams have punting is probably taken as large of a jump as anything.
Yeah.
Punting's
call.
a lot better now.
Good call.
It used to be a punter. It's 30 years ago. When I was a scrub on a high school team. You hope your punter would kick it 35, 40 yards. You almost went for it on fourth down sometimes because you weren't sure what was going to happen. But that's not true anymore. Soccer is big enough that it's helped. It's helped a lot of people get better at it. So, yeah, it's a good time for high school football in the state. I think Class B is going to be great too, and C1's really competitive. Some really good teams in Class C that'll be fun to watch as well.
Sam, want to switch gears here over to Nebraska. They have a game on Thursday. Some people may have forgotten, but they obviously start the season off with Minnesota. You were writing for today's Monday Rewind on your season preview about 7 stats to watch, 7 spotlight players, 5 key questions. Without giving too much away, because I want people to go and read your stuff, what are one of those 5 key questions that is kind of ruminating in your head the most, that's kind of got your wheels turning the most?
Okay, that's good. No, I mean, there's a lot of different areas you could go there. Some of the stats are hard to explain.
Sure.
Over the radio. So
yeah.
I'm glad we're not necessarily going that route. And not that they're overly complex, but they're important and they're indicative more than they're anything else. Okay, so one of the questions that I would say that that I think you can start beginning to answer this week is what kind of offensive coordinator is Marcus Satterfield going to be? And so the question I asked was, is he more Sean Watson, Tim Beck, Danny Langsdorff, Troy Walters, Matt Lubick, or Mark Whipple? Now, Troy Walters, in my opinion, didn't do a ton as the coordinator other than sort of game playing it out. But Scott called all the plays. Mm-hmm. He and Ryan Held would get together on Friday night and figure out what they were going to do. Matt Lubick did more, in my opinion, than Walters did. And then the other guys called the plays. Mm-hmm. I mean, Langsdorff called the plays. Riley wouldn't take it away from him. He probably should have, but he didn't. Whipple, all those things. So the question becomes, what kind of offensive coordinator is Marcus Satterfield going to be? Is he going to be a guy that, tries to play real safe and run the football and play field position and guard against not turning it over? Is he going to be a guy that is really aggressive? Danny Langsdorff was really aggressive, and they paid for it in turnovers. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be a guy that is kind of abandons the run game the way Mark Whipple did? Is he going to be like Sean Watson, who Watson had some really good games at Nebraska. He also could get a little inside his own head and too many formations and trying to do too much on a given play, and it didn't always work. And he probably needed, Barney Cotton was helpful to him more than people knew. And that, Cotton helped Tim Beck for sure. But Watson, I think, was at times resistant to Cotton's assistance too. So, what kind of coordinator is he going to be? What kind of game is he going to call? Does he work with Donovan Raiola? I don't, I think Raiola is a position coach. I don't know that he is a Cotton-esque offensive play designer. Sometimes your offensive line coaches are that. I don't know that Raiola is that. So who does Satterfield work with? My sense is McGuire, who's going to be a head coach one day, works with the passing game. And that might be the guy that Satterfield leans on, and Rule. I think Matt Rule is the other one. And maybe that GA, Adam D. Michelle, who was
good dude.
Yeah, Rule's first quarterback at Temple. A lot of people don't know this. We need to do a story on him because I'm not sure why he isn't a quarterback coach already.
But
he's not.
Great point, Sam. Extremely astute. You always hit me with like one per segment every week. He absolutely is a gem. I think I said something about him maybe 3 weeks ago or a month, just kind of and it might have been to you, about having available staff ready to take jobs. Yeah, that was you. D. Michelle is one of them.
Right.
I'm very charismatic. He's a good relationship builder. He was great during recruiting weekends. He's a stud.
I'm sure he is. And what's interesting to me, okay, so Satterfield's going to call the game from the field, which is fine. Watson called from the booth. Langsdorff called from the booth. Whipple called from the field. I don't know. Lubick was up there. Walters was up there. He was up in the booth.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Lubick, I think, is a smart, analyst. He understands the game and knows how to, score points and design plays and stuff. And then Tim Beck was up in the booth. So Marcus Satterfield's going to be down on the field. A lot of play callers don't do that. And I thought to myself, so is his job going to be to pull Jeff Sims off to the side and coach him, or is that going to be D. Michelle's job? We need to check that, because I would think that he, the GA could actually really help there, because he was a 4-year starter at Temple. I mean, he played a lot of college football and understands the sport. It was a while ago. I mean, it was a decade ago, but I don't think people realize that guy's on the staff. That's a guy that, is quite a ways down the line. But Ryan Gunderson, people don't remember this. So Ryan Gunderson worked for Mike Riley. He worked for Mike Riley for a decade. Then he ultimately said, screw it, I want to become an assistant coach. I don't want to do this personnel thing anymore. Now he's the quarterback coach at UCLA. So sometimes guys get a late start on that stuff, but they've got a guy there that I think can coach a quarterback. So Satterfield being on the field is interesting to me. And I'll just be curious to see what kind of offensive coordinator he is. We'll track the plays that they run and the kinds of formations they're in. I think I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do. I could be wrong. I think I have a pretty good idea of how it's going to look. We'll see what they do. I think they've got a pretty good offensive line on the right side to run block. So we'll see what happens.
Sam, what kind of offensive coordinator do you hope he is, or do you think he needs to be?
Well, I think for one thing, you just want to be really in sync with what your head coach is looking for. And you want to be in sync there. And, just as an example, I think Tim Beck, who's now the head coach at Coastal Carolina, was pretty good. I was probably too hard on him when he was here. He was not in sync all the time with Bo. Bo wanted him to slow it down. Beck wanted to crank it up. When he went to Ohio State, a lot of the same stuff happened. Urban Meyer kind of took it over, and they ran the ball more than I think Beck would have wanted to run it. And, so there's all kinds of things that happened there as well. But you want your OC to be in sync. Frost and Whipple weren't in sync at all. I mean, Frost comes off the Northwestern game. He comes in a press conference, and outside of the onside kick, everybody could see that he was arguing with Whipple on the sideline. And, he's like, well, this is, we need some work with this, or Mark's got a call. And I'm like, my goodness.
We need to be more collaborative as a staff is how it was worded, Coach.
Good Lord. I was thinking, what in the world why did you hire the guy? You could have hired somebody that did exactly what you wanted to do. So I think that was interesting. I don't put Watson's struggles really on somewhat, but he's a different guy, great play caller, very respected in the industry. Sean Watson is, but obviously by the time he was done in 2010, he knew he needed to go because it was getting toxic. And that was back when Nebraska football was good. And when Nebraska gets good, they're actually harder on the coaches than when they're bad, because people can see around the corner and they see a team that might potentially play for a national title, and they see an offensive coordinator holding them back. And so I think Watson took a lot of grief, probably more than he deserved. So did Cotton. And, a lot of that was because Nebraska was close, but they couldn't get over the hot top because their offense would screw it up.
Sam, let me ask you something. So even in these talks, and we're previewing, there's always this frame of reference that's from the past, whether it's last year or 10 years ago or whatever, right? When we're trying to quantify what's going to happen on Thursdays. It's kind of weird, but it's all we have without really seeing a game. How important is it emotionally for this team who has some carryover, the Robinsons, the Newsoms, guys like that, the interior of that offensive line? to not have that frame of reference to stay in the moment? Could I make the case that it's more important on Thursday, more emotionally than it is physically, and have you buy that? Because they got to get rid. They got to get rid of that baggage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The team they're playing too, I think, plays a part in that. Minnesota has found a way to beat Nebraska in, every which way. I mean, they've beaten the brakes off them, but they've also like gotten a big lead and held on because Nebraska screwed up. They've overcome a 10-0 deficit. They've done a lot of things against Nebraska. So, for sure, I think there's an emotional and mental component to it. Playing Minnesota is a weird experience, I think, because rarely are they going to pull away from you. They're gonna hang around and let you hang around, and the game feels quick and it's over. And so I think there's ways in which Nebraska's got to just kind of keep its head steady, and be ready. I think the following week, regardless of what Colorado does against TCU, and by the way, I think that game will be more competitive than some do. Nebraska has to have almost the opposite end. They have to bring a lot to the table when they go to Colorado. They have to have an emotional peak, and they've got to sustain it for 3 hours, because there's going to be a lot of emotion on Colorado's side. And now maybe TCU will run Colorado out of the stadium, and there you go. And Colorado will lose it, but Colorado's going to be very jacked up based on Deion Sanders. I mean, those players have a lot of belief in them. And so, they will not take the field against TCU with an absence of confidence. If they were to win that game, they will come into Folsom Field just off the charts. And so Nebraska has to match that emotion and that intensity, and then they've got to maintain it, because there's been times when I think Nebraska's had great intensity, but they don't maintain it for 4 quarters. Rule's got to get the team to the place where it's playing with a leading edge at the very beginning of the game, but it's also doing that in the 4th quarter. And that's been the problem, is the consistency has not always been there.
We're talking with Sam McKewon of the Omaha World Herald. Sam, I'm curious, what are you more interested to see what it looks like? Marcus Satterfield's offense or Tony White's defense?
Well, I have a pretty good sense, like I said, of what Satterfield's going to try to do, and we'll see how it goes. I'm more intrigued to see how Tony White constructs it and how they go about stopping the run, the things that they do to try to stop it. I'm probably more intrigued to see how that's structured, because I want to know what Nebraska is going to try to do. How are they going to structure their defense? How are they going to get smaller guys to make plays on the field against a giant team? Will Minnesota have answers for that? All those little things. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that quite a bit.
Sam, come Thursday night, is there a scenario in which, this question is basically preempted from the fact that Coach Rule has talked about multiple ways that this game could start. It could be a good start, could be a bad start, but whatever it is, he wants to get this thing to where you maybe have to utilize a 4-minute offense or something like that. He called it grown man football. Is there a way that you think would be is there a start that you think is indicative or would be a microcosm of how you think this team is going to play over the long haul? I would say, are you looking for a quick start? Or have you resigned that it's just going to be unesthetically pleasing? What's your mental benchmark?
Mm-hmm. Well, defensively, if you're looking at ideals, they really confused Minnesota early, and Minnesota's not exactly sure how to manage what Nebraska's doing. I don't know that that's going to be true. I don't know that Minnesota will be confused, but defensively, that's what that would look like, is that, Minnesota just doesn't get it. Nebraska's getting guys free. They're getting in the back. Offensively, I think they're going to run an NFL offense in many ways. They'll have some spread components to it. As people who watch the NFL know, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chicago Bears, and the Indianapolis Colts are all pretty much running a run spread pro offense at this point. And, anybody who watched the Colts or watched Anthony Richardson saw that. So Nebraska can do many of those things too. Doesn't mean that you don't throw the ball. Obviously, the Eagles and the Colts will throw the ball. I don't know if that's fair. But, I don't. They might throw it 9 times a game. You never know. So, you can see the NFL style offense that Nebraska could run. You got to find a way to get big plays. How do you get them? Who do you send deep? Is Alex Bullock the next Brandon Riley? I don't know. You could send Brandon Riley deep, though. He could go make a play. Is he that guy? Is Thomas Fidone able to catch one in the seam? And the minute Thomas Fidone catches a couple, let's say he catches one for 18 and he catches one for 22. Well, then your defense has to change. You can't let that guy beat you all day long. That's like letting a guy get to the rim for a layup all day. So one of the great things about tight ends is once you hit them a couple of times, defenses almost preternaturally adjust because they hate the idea of a guy over the middle beating them for a couple of throws. And so, they'll do different things against it. Now that changes a little bit in the NFL. The receivers are so good in the NFL that a guy like Kelsey or Gronkowski gets man-to-man coverage, but that's the NFL. And in college, Nebraska's not going to have enough good receivers that Thomas Fidone can just be manned up, or Borkercher for that matter. So they've got to find a way to get tight ends open down.
Finally, somebody with some sense. A good Borkercher reference. Nice work, Sam.
Right. They get those guys open. They hit them, and then you'll see the defense adjust a little bit. And then maybe you can get some stuff going on outside. So Nebraska's got to find a way to get those tight ends involved. If they can get them involved early, I would love to see. I'm not expecting to see, but I would love to see a properly executed running back screen. One where we haven't. I'll tell you what, we have not seen them since Bill Callahan.
Yeah.
Who might have been the best running back screen designer we've ever seen. He was unbelievable.
I think you know what I think a lot of that is though, Sam. I think he was so good at coaching offensive line. They're really the key to a good screen game.
Right. I think Corey Ross had like 34 catches against Iowa State that one day, and it was just beautiful, And Bill Callahan was so good at that.
34.
You've got to, and Sean Watson was pretty good at it too.
Yeah.
But man, did they lose that skill set under Tim Beck, and did they ever lose it in the last couple of years? I mean, they stopped trying to run them. They're like, we can't even do it. We can't even run the thing. And so, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's a shame I've only got 30 seconds. Biggest surprise that they've made an emergence on this defense. Gunnarsson, Hill, or Deshaun Singleton?
It's Singleton, but not because I didn't think he was going to be good. I thought Singleton would be really good. For whatever reason, he was a little bit in the doghouse last year, and he's made the jump that I think a lot of people thought he would.
Sam McKewon, the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
More of the Damon Benning Show coming up next.
We'll be right back in 5 minutes. We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds.
Hartman now under center on the left hash, turns, gives to Estime right side, easily into the end zone, touchdown Notre Dame. Back to the air. Jaden Greathouse.
Caleb, empty back. Touchdown USC, their first of the year. A new set of downs. See Taj Washington. The 20, the 15, 10, 5, and touchdown USC, Taj Washington.
Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Welcome back. Ooh, that's old DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are here with you. Hurrdat AM 550 ESPN. Cities out in central Nebraska. And we are brought to you by the Beanery. The Beanery, 4 great locations, Gretna, Papillion, Ashland, and their newest location off of 168th and Giles will open in October. They've got a coffee truck. You can hit them up at info@thebeanerycoffee.com. Locally owned and operated. They roast their own coffee, serving people coffee. They got iced, frozen, hot, specialty drinks, breakfast, muffins, the whole thing. The Beanery has you covered.
Where'd you go? I lost you.
Did I hop out of the stream?
Oh, I don't know. I
don't know. We'll get back in there.
You know, it's interesting. Sam was talking about this stems from Friday night too, seeing Tristan and Lloyd on the field. Special teams a concern for you, or do you feel better?
For Nebraska?
Yeah.
So I feel better about the effort's going to be there.
You like Boom Sheeny?
Yes. I think punting's going to be fine. I think they're putting an emphasis on the fact that it matters. They're focusing on it. I'm not worried about all that. It's are they going to make kicks or not, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, how we generally judge special teams. Unless you're giving up huge chunk returns all the time.
See, I think that actually has to be good in Nebraska's favor in the punt return game, right? Like
where they're actually returning punts.
Yeah, you see all the hidden yards that can be saved in the punt return game.
Absolutely. There's over the last handful of years. I mean, and it goes back. I don't even know how long. Off and on, you've had guys that could return here or there, right? But for the most part, over the last, I don't know how far we got to go back. I mean, we liked DeJuan Gross as a punt returner.
There were flashes from Amir, but it was mostly kick.
Kickoff. You had like a couple flashes from Cam Taylor-Britt, I think, but he was never really the full-time guy.
Didn't do it enough.
You haven't had consistent threats in the punt return game for a really long time at Nebraska, and you're just giving up. Like you said, it's free. It's not free yardage; it's hidden yardage, right? Because you have to work for it.
I was messing with our coaches on Friday, because we were talking about, you have to be unselfish, and we didn't throw the ball very much, and not more than one receiver with a catch. And it's like, I said, the offensive lines had to have had some confidence, right? You guys just ran the ball all night, and our offensive line coach said, it's funny. You got to understand how much field position and hidden yardage there is in our punt return game, because we're not letting that thing roll.
Nope.
Right? We're trying to go get that thing wherever it is, just because I don't know how hard people work at it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that at the collegiate level too. Now the pros is different. Those guys are so talented from a directional standpoint, and guys that are on special teams, that may be their only job.
Yeah, a lot of times it is.
Right. So it's different, but at the collegiate level, I thought it would. Well, we saw SC house one.
Yeah.
On kickoff return, but man, that can be huge early on in the season. I thought special teams may be a difference maker in, like, let's say North Bellevue West. Now, it didn't turn out to be that way, but like, you're always looking for like those advantages, especially when you're on the road and it's a conference opener. Well, because Minnesota's kicking game left a little to be desired last year.
Yes. Well, and there's a really good example. You were talking about high school over the weekend. So I remember one punt specifically. I think it was in the first quarter where it was a little short and it bounced.
Oh, he caught it on the
run. Caleb
like
sprinted after that thing and made sure he got it.
Yeah.
Had a nice little return on it too, but the most important thing is it stopped bouncing, right? And then I go back to Thursday where Miller North had an opportunity.
And you know what's funny about that?
Yeah.
How it plays out, because Coach Sikora went over with the offense the first play that they wanted to run. We were going to get in this formation called truck. It's a little bigger formation. And he said, now, depending on field position, all bets are off.
Yeah.
We want to give some of our young offensive linemen some confidence. So that's just playing complementary deal. Like, we started on the plus side of the field, which allowed us to get into that formation and build some confidence early. Yeah. And when, so like, I think it kind of set the tone, just like the opening hit on kickoff, right?
Absolutely.
That kind of set the tone. It would be nice with all the tweaks and variations people are doing to special teams, that if it was of the utmost importance at the collegiate deal, because you can win games that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've watched a team in Iowa City do it for years.
Absolutely.
Right? You can win with special teams.
That is a team that is, you mentioned Iowa. That is a team that has been as consistently mediocre to worse on offense as you can possibly be.
What is it again?
Mediocre to worse on offense as you can possibly be. And they still win 8 games every single year, right? So there's definitely games to be won there. We've seen at Nebraska, there's games to be lost there. I'm just looking at Michigan State, right, where you can't kick it to the right side of the field. The couple was it 2020?
What? Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, you lose the game because you can't punt the ball to the right side of the field.
To the wrong third away from directional coverage to Reed.
Like that.
As if Joe Reed wasn't like that dude.
That's what I mean. Like, that is, I mean, you literally win the game if you can kick the ball on the correct half of the field.
Right. They didn't give up a first down in the second half.
No, and they lost that game because they couldn't punt it.
All right, I'm not going to bring up old stuff.
So, but that's what I mean, though, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly your point, is there are games to be won and lost in this area that maybe people don't focus on a ton. I am hoping that those types of things are locked up, right? Quit letting the ball roll for 20 yards. just hustle over there and pick it up. I understand their situations. They're a little dangerous. You maybe don't want to muff it, cause a fumble, whatever. But for the most part, get over there and pick the ball up, right? Don't let it roll for 20 yards, especially if it's the kind of offense we think it's going to be. Probably not super explosive, more run-based, don't make mistakes, take care of the football, don't beat yourself. If you're running that kind of offense, you can't afford to give up the extra yards in special teams, right? Because you're not going to be gashing people, I don't think, on that side of the ball. Not very often. So special teams is something, honestly, we don't talk about a ton because I don't know. It's hard. It's a little bit harder to quantify, right? Defense, how many points you give up. Offense, how many points you score. How many yards you get. How many yards you give up, right? Special teams, outside of making and missing kicks, or, hey, he took this one to the house or whatever, a lot of the stuff that matters kind of goes outside of a box score or whatever stats you're looking at, right? So that is, a really good point, and it's going to be really interesting because if Nebraska's going to win the way this year they say they're going to try and win,
it's got to be an equal component, right? Of the third
has to be on point because I like the defense. I'm
at least on paper, right? Because I see him quite a bit.
I like the pieces, right? I don't know what it's going to look like.
And even I'm wondering, okay, is this a product of the offense they're going against? Is it a good matchup? Because what Nebraska wants to do offensively is have the same people play multiple positions, so it's hard to personnel.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's a big deal. It's an underappreciated deal. Hey, when such and such and such and such is in the game, we want to play this kind of defense.
Yes.
When such and such and such and such is in the game on offense, we want to line up like this. If multiple guys can line up multiple places, it sometimes can limit what you do defensively.
Right.
If Nebraska can be versatile within their scheme with personnel, that's a clear advantage. So I want to know, but even in the spring game, and I said this right after the spring game, I said the real MVP of that spring game was Tony White because he's hamstrung, right? You got a team that you just played in a bowl game, well aware of what you like to do. You've got you've got a peer that's on Minnesota's coaching staff defensively that came over from Syracuse, right? So if you can pull off what you need to pull off defensively against this team, you're probably on your way. And I'm not saying pretty good. I'm not saying Calic Manis is Joe Willie Namath as a dual threat quarterback, but pre-injury at Alabama, Joe Willie Namath.
Not Chargers.
No. So it's like people forget. If they can be multiple and get multiple hats to the ball like they have been doing, I will be pleased. I won't say I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I'll be pleased because the whole thing is predicated on its versatility.
Yeah.
Right. They can get in a bare front, cover guard, center guard, and still play the same run fit coverage behind it, even though the front is different.
Right.
Like that's the way that defense is built. Can they execute that against a team where I'm not sure what Minnesota's going to do on offense. Was the spring game any indication?
I don't think so.
Because their best players were outside the numbers, and you got a tremendous tight end and span forward.
Yeah.
Are they going to throw the ball? Is this going to be air gopher?
Minnesota and Wisconsin air raid offenses. You heard it here first.
Stop.
More of DB and me coming up next.
We'll be right back in 4 minutes. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. We'll be right back in 1 minute. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
I think my time in the NFL really prepared me to do this better, right? I think if we're playing for our staff or if they're being recruited by our staff, they're probably better prepared for things at the next level than maybe before. I've adopted probably more walkthroughs and things like that than meetings after my time there, because I just see the value of like getting out there and, feeling it and doing it, so football's so different, it's like at that level you're preparing for like outside zone and duo, and then you get here and it's like, how are we going to handle this RPO, that RPO, this football is way more in some ways complex or different, varied. But we're kind of going with the same schedule we used at Baylor. It's a unique practice schedule, but it's something we believe in, so I'm excited to do it with the guys.
Welcome back to the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. We are coming to you here from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Couple of things I probably should have mentioned by now. You can email the show at thedbshow@hurrdatsports.com.
That comes to both of us.
I've set it up on my computer. It was a very
arduous,
harrowing experience.
Oh, you may have to do mine.
I'll do yours for you. I figured it out. We're good now.
Fudge. Do you know how long it took me to get my school email on my phone? I had to take it to the IT department at school. You talk about
special for being like a reasonably
smart individual.
Yeah, for both of us, I struggle so much with like linking emails to different things.
The struggle is real.
You're
exactly right.
I figured it out. It is on my computer. The files are inside the computer.
So did you hear Sasha speaking Portuguese to me this morning? She said, "Yeah, I'll send you a XRT XL something. You just put it in your computer."
None of that meant anything.
And I was like, "So do I need gaming headsets or not?" Like,
I'm gonna need you to tell me.
I'm just trying to figure out how to have the show from the hotel room. That's all.
Real specifically what I need to do here.
That's okay.
No,
Yeah, he's dead set on that schedule. I was talking to him Saturday because, well, whatever. And he said no practice today. Tomorrow we have our Tuesday. Today is their off day. So he's already back the days down.
Yeah.
And counting backwards just so they can stay on
schedule,
a full scheduled practice week. So again, not a guy not that that's novel. It's just that's just what good head coaches do. Sometimes we aren't used to.
I think there's a lot of things that good head coaches do that we're not used to.
Well, sometimes he just says things and
it seems novel to us.
It moves our needle. I'm like, see, that's why I love that guy.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like,
man, DB, you just love Coach Rule. Like, nah, not. I mean, yes and no, right? Like, I do, but he's just saying out loud what we've wanted to hear for a long time. So it's easy to gravitate.
And the things that we already believed, right? That's what it is for me. For a lot of the things with Rule.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were that smart. Me, I just like hearing it. You probably thought about it ahead of time.
A lot of not all of it, right?
No, but I know a lot of times you do. You've been telling me this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right.
The philosophical stuff, right? The football stuff, he's obviously way smarter than me on, and he's probably way smarter than me on the other stuff too. But I've thought about the other stuff, the accountability and the way that all of the little things are important to him, right? I thought it was kind of interesting. Listening to his comments from Friday after the Minnesota week press conference that they had on Friday afternoon, where he's talking about some of the things of, he makes the guys eat 3 meals at the training table every day. And then Ty Robinson's talking about how regimented their schedule is. And it just kind of struck me that this dude has left nothing up to chance.
Mm-hmm.
Of the things that he has any bit of control over, he has left 0 of those things up to chance, which again is your job as the head football coach, right? Like, that shouldn't seem like this novel idea, but I know at all levels, right? And he's got more control over a college football program than, let's say, Coach Lamanji has over a high school football program or whatever, right? But the fact that he is just saying, hey, if we're going to win or lose football games, it's not going to be because our nutrition wasn't on point. It's not going to be because
our catapult system failed us. We don't understand soft tissue injuries.
It's not going to be because our guys didn't recover right or didn't get enough sleep or because we didn't know what defensive front they were going to come out in or whatever the X factor is, they will be prepared for it. Now, if the team goes out and executes, I don't know. And neither does he probably. But all the other things, I guarantee you they will not lose games because of that.
Yeah.
And that is a much more rare thing than I think people appreciate. Probably not amongst winning coaches, but I think there's even some coaches.
What do you think's more apt to happen?
Mm-hmm.
A targeting call against Detroit team for the second time that extends a drive and you eventually lose the game.
Okay.
A directional punt, which is in the wrong direction, or a scramble attempt on a potential game-tying drive where Nebraska fumbles the ball, or losing 3 games in a row in which your opponent had yet to score at the half. Those are all ways in which Nebraska lost over the last 5 years.
So the only one that I think is somewhat
the fumble on the potential game-tying drive.
I was actually going to say the targeting.
Okay.
Because they've made such a big deal about fumbling and holding on to the football and Anthony Grant's third string because of it. right?
He's still going to play his brains out.
No, he's still going to play. And listen,
yeah.
I think he's still a really good football player, right? But they've made their messaging clear. If you don't hang on to the football, you're not playing for us, right? So fumble second, the targeting, because some of that's a little bit of a crapshoot, right? That's the one that I think you have the least control over. You know, receiver ducks his head at the last second. You end up helmet to helmet.
You could get Nate Gary where it's actually a good tackle. And
it's a good tackle, or maybe like
although one of his was like,
you know, some of Gary's were legit. Some of them were not so legit. But so that's the one. It would be the targeting for me.
Dude, was that not an awful call
on Caleb?
You don't have to say who it was. It was just
everybody knows who it was.
It's just a bad call.
It was a bad call. It was basically because the funny part was, so there's this play in the first quarter.
I just think targeting is you're probably right. The way you just described
that's
it.
the one, because that's the one that has the most variables you can't control. Right? Is targeting. Fumbling is second because like some of that, like sometimes you get a helmet on a ball and there's not a lot you can do, right? But it's not going to be because they can't punt the ball the right direction.
God, I was so mad.
It's not going to be because of like procedural penalties and all these other things that Nebraska's just given away over the last handful of years. It's not going to be because of that. And that is, again, it goes down to, hey, they're on these ridiculous, like I saw your itinerary. It is boom, 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 boom. Like
isn't that crazy?
Regimented, it like military style schedule for your itinerary, and you're not even on the team.
I know, right?
Like that's so to imagine the extra level.
I read that,
and
I had to sit on it for like 30 minutes.
You're like, I'm gonna need a second.
Seriously. And all I could muster over to Greg, because Greg Sharpie sent it to me, and I was just like, thanks, man, appreciate it. I was like, yeah, this is kind of different than what I was used to last year.
Yeah.
Even the verbiage of what he calls some of the downtime or transitional time where you have to be accountable.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. He leaves nothing up to chance or to ambiguity.
Yeah.
Right. If he can help it, there will be no ambiguity in there. We've got another caller on our War Horse hotline. If you want to join us, this is the other thing I was trying to do, and we got off track.
888-638-4876.
That's right. The War Horse Sportsbook phone line. We've got JB in KC joining us now. JB, you've got about a minute and a half. What do you got?
Hey, guys. Morning. How's it going?
JB, what's up, buddy?
Not much. Sitting here, heard Ravi talking about, the philosophical difference in coach role that we've seen from other coaches. And years ago, some buddies of mine and I were playing golf out at Benson, and we got paired up with this guy, and we were going, and it was a good time. And eventually figured out that he played football for Nebraska kind of in the mid 80s. And he got to tell us some stories. And one story that he told us that always stuck with me is he was from Florida, and he was being recruited by Coach Osborne, and Coach goes down to Florida to visit him, and he looks at him and says, "What are some of your goals for your first year at Nebraska?" And he was a pretty highly rated recruit, and the guy said, I'm gonna compete for a starting job my freshman year, and then sophomore year, I expect to be a starter for you, Coach, and then junior year, I expect to be a Heisman candidate, and by the time I'm done, I expect to be ready for the NFL. And he said that Coach looked at him and kind of just grinned and nodded and looked over at his mom and said, "Does he wake himself up in the morning?" She said, "No." He said, "Does he do his own dishes?" "No." "Does he cook his own meals?" "No." "Does he do his own laundry?" "No." He turned back to the player and said, "Your first year, we're going to work on that stuff." He said there was no way in hell he was going to go to Nebraska, and his mom, twisted his arm, and that's where he ended up. And to me, that was the difference in coach, not the option of the fullback or anything else. That attention to detail and developing players was the difference.
JB in KC. Great call. We appreciate that story. We will have more
That's so T.O.
of the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla coming up next.
We will be back in 4 minutes. We will be back in 3 minutes. We will be back in 2 minutes. We will be back in 1 minute. We will be back in 30 seconds.
Down Notre Dame.
New set of downs.
Hartman.
Hurrdat Sports presents The Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Welcome back to the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla here on a Monday, live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are powered by Go Currency. What's up, DB?
Just too much to ask to close the door? Or?
Yeah, apparently. You know what? It's not too much to ask, though.
What's that?
Is for you to get out to an Omaha Storm Chasers.
Let's get it. Hey, the press tweeted at us this morning.
Who, Marty?
Yeah.
I like Marty.
Come on, man. How can you not?
He's a good dude.
He's amazing.
Yeah, terrific guy.
Yeah.
Don't know him super well, but all of my interactions with him have been A+.
He's the real deal.
No complaints. But they are at home this week, starting again tomorrow. They're taking the day off. You know, they deserve a day just like the rest of us, except DB doesn't get any days off, but that's all right.
We're not complaining.
We're not going to. No days off.
No days off. I get a chance to go to work and hopefully do something productive.
That's right. But the Storm Chasers have the Louisville Bats coming to town Tuesday, Wednesday. Not that kind of bats. I think baseball bats, like Louisville Sluggers. You know what I mean? Baseball bats.
Yeah.
You know,
I finally took my bag out of my car.
Your baseball bag?
I no longer carry it.
How long did you carry that thing?
Years.
Was it baseball or softball stuff?
It was softball stuff.
Okay,
but it's a baseball bag.
Because you were like big into softball for a while,
Yeah.
right?
So the other day at practice, there were 2 guys out.
Yeah.
Because we practice on a baseball field.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
marked it off and everything. It has the college goalposts. And they were out there playing catch. And I asked Coach Lamanji if I could go play with them. And
He said no.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna play with him?
He said, "I know you can't be serious because I know you like your job too much." I was like, dang.
So that's like a low-key way to be like, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
So go watch baseball, man. It's a beautiful sport.
It is. So get out to the Omaha Storm Chasers, support our guy Marty Cordero, the Prez out there, and our great friends over at Werner Park.
Go Prez. It's your birthday. Go Prez.
So we were talking earlier with George about some of the dynamics involved in what happened in high school football on Friday night.
Mhm.
Okay. And he kind of started hinting at some of the things I wanted to talk about, because when you get a 93-0 game, something, I said this earlier, something went wrong, right? And I don't necessarily want to point, the finger here, the finger there, be like, oh, somebody is to blame. But there obviously is something that needs fixed.
Mhm.
Can that be true, that something needs fixed without blaming someone?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of what I wanted to get into, because, you look at that score and the low-hanging fruit is to be like, oh, Lincoln North Star, what are you doing? You got to call off the dogs, whatever. To my understanding, they did.
Mhm.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
from what like I said, didn't watch that game live.
Talk to a ton of people.
Doesn't seem like they were trying to pour it on.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of those guys they never played varsity football before.
Well, that's the thing, right? And so you're in this situation where you have guys that haven't played varsity football. Are you just supposed to tell them not to play at all? Are you supposed to be taking knees every play? Is that more demoralizing than actually playing? If you're in the third quarter and your opponent's just taking knees on you, is that worse?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
what I mean?
Like I said, I've been there.
Dude, so have I. So like I played on just about the worst college basketball team you could possibly imagine.
The guy that I work for,
Yeah.
that I coach with,
Mhm.
hung almost 80 on us.
Yeah.
The very next year after his program, 80.
Yeah.
Dan Jackson, my buddy,
Mhm.
was the OC.
Yeah.
Coach Samanji, the head coach. I think they scored 77.
Yeah.
Like,
and they like you.
Yeah. North scored a touchdown late against us at North. We kind of played them close, and they scored late. They ended up maybe winning by like 28 or something. And they got vertical on us late in the third quarter, and they were going to win the win, but we had played them pretty close in the first half. And I was talking to Coach O'Neill after the game, and I understand, right? Because those guys are out there trying to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're out here trying to do something. And I told him, I said, I remember saying this, and I believed it. I said, at some point, we'll be in a position where we won't have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like that's all I could say, right?
That's the goal, right?
That's the goal.
Right. And you're in very different positions as a program at that point, right? Because you're just trying to get to the point where you're not on the receiving end of those discussions about, hey, should they have called off the dog? Should they have done X, Y, Z, whatever? and they're in a position where they're trying to get their football team better because they think they have a chance to, go to state or win a state title or whatever. And Lincoln North Star is probably not in that position in terms of winning state titles or anything like that this year, but I'm sure they're in a position where they want to try and get their football program better, trying to get some young guys, some experience. So if we're not looking at the coaches as someone to blame here, what are we looking at, right? And George brought up some interesting factors that it seemed like you wanted to get into a little bit more.
Yeah, because I just think he was on to something when he talked about not utilizing census
as the classification system,
which is student population, because we're not the only, like, the Metro isn't the only schools facing this. Like, you see this in a lot of, that's why schools have had to consolidate, right, at the D1, C2 level because of enrollment.
Yeah,
it's just simply enrollment. Now, that's not always the end all be all, because you could be a school like Omaha South, which has 2,900 students.
Yes.
But I don't know, and I'd have to talk to Coach Johnson, their new head coach over at Omaha South, to see how many they have out.
Right.
But that there's not always a direct correlation. But I think at some point you have to have some good hard talks about how many people you're going to actually have out for football. I've done, I do state finals every year, right? And
I mean, Benetting's a really good example of this at Class B, right?
Yeah, I remember doing Elkhorn South's first state championship at the Class B level. I dressed 80 kids.
Yeah,
I mean, they're part of the Elkhorn South had such good numbers. They're part of the reason there's now a cap on the medal ceremony. Right, they're only handing out so many.
It's like, yeah,
right?
Listen,
sorry,
freshman, better luck next year.
So, I mean, I've seen it both ways, and
yeah, and we've got
speak of the angel, we got our guy back.
Yeah, we've got our guy George calling back here on the Warhorse hotline. All right, George, we wanted to get back into
turn your radio down for me, champ.
George, we wanted to get back into.
Yeah, I turned it up.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's great, George. So you were talking earlier about some of the issues with the census-based classification system. Why don't you get back into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, thank you for giving me a chance to kind of speak further on the issue, because I think it's something that, it often it takes a tragedy. I'm not saying a 93-0 loss is a tragedy, but it's as close to tragedy as you can get in sports, especially football, for adults to finally open their eyes. And I've been trying to say for years that, back when me and Damon played and right before then, census-based classification worked, which means basically the largest schools were 28 schools were Class A. You're generally playing teams of similar competition, and you generally never saw scores like this. Now, you would see some heavy scores, but nothing to what we've seen this past weekend. But the fact of the matter is the world has changed, and we're not taking that into consideration in that the world has changed. First of all, select sports has changed the demographics of the communities in certain sports. I don't think football is any different. The migration patterns of certain communities have changed. Benson, back in the Beelan days and the Randy Stellar days was a football powerhouse, but that community has changed drastically. Same thing with Northwest, same thing with South. So football is not the primary sport in a lot of those communities. And
that's even changed at Central, and they have amazing numbers within the school.
Exactly. So I think as adults, I think it's incumbent on us to take a look at that, especially when we're talking about high school sports. Because the purpose of high school sports, as we were told, is to teach competitiveness and certain life lessons. And one of the things that I think scores like this are going to show is we got a guy at Benson that's trying to build a program. Damon, you've been through it at Northwest.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to build a program when you get a score like this. And this is, no disrespect to Lincoln North Star. Maybe they might be a top 5 team this year. We don't know. Maybe we'll find out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But could you imagine if this was Westside? I don't think DB would put 93 on them. I think he'd figure out a way not to put 93 on them. But the fact of the matter is, census-based classification is not working anymore. I mean, when Gretna beat South, I believe it was last year, 84, they scored 84. And so these scores, if you look through the last 2 or 3 years, these scores of these massive, basically mismatches are occurring more and more. And the part of the problem is the demographics, economics. The certain schools are not allowing them to compete at a certain level. Omaha Scott, Omaha Norris, some of those Class B schools can play Class A. And they can compete in the top of Class A or the middle of Class A. So what I'm trying to tell folks is like, look, we got to stop looking at the fact that you got 2,000 kids who can play Class A football, because if you got a football program that's got, Damon, what is it, 40 kids?
Yeah.
And Creighton Prep has 2 football teams, freshman football teams with probably 80 kids in the 2 programs, the JV team and varsity team. Westside could probably do the same thing, and a lot of the other suburban and private schools can do the same thing. And then you're asking them to go play a school like Benson that's got 39 kids and they're decimated, because we all know that the fact of the matter is some things are happening within OPS itself. You know, a lot of the kids that can play are going to North, or they're going to other schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that the NSAA needs to get their head out of the sand, and I've tried to tell them this, and other folks have tried to tell them this. The days of census-based classification as a measure of competitiveness is over. We have to change the metrics. Either you shrink Class A down, or you figure out a way to get teams to go up and down the system, because you're going to see more and more of these scores, and that's just a reality.
So the messages are flowing in. It's not that you're not spot on. My buddy was just telling me, and he coaches at what I would call one of the powerhouse schools. He says my senior year in 98 at State, we had 55 kids on the roster. Now they get 20 kids out at most. Still has a similar population and enrollment. He said the numbers may be even more disproportionate out west. And I was telling Ravi, this isn't just a metro issue. This is like you see this at a ton of different classes, which is kind of how we have consolidation to begin with.
Yep.
So, George, let me ask you, because
if it's tax-based revenue for public schools, George, and you're getting money for heads, that's a legislative issue too.
Absolutely. It is a legislative issue. But at the end of the day, the legislature is really not going to get into the details and minute details of what sports are. And that's why we've got folks that we thought were adults at the NSAA, that's their job, was supposed to maybe put some competitive balance back into these systems. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, they've abrogated their responsibility and their duty.
So, George, let me ask you, because I agree there's obviously something that needs to be done. Do you have, do you have some ideas on other alternatives that might work a little better?
I do. I think number one, you can do it on a sport by sport basis. I know a lot of people are not going to like that, because for clearly South High football is not comparable to South High soccer. That's just a fact. Okay. South High soccer is very competitive. But I think the solution is, I think the soccer world has done it very well for decades. It's called relegation. Relegation system basically works this way. It's like, okay, you play your season, and let's say Class A, they want to do 28 teams. Okay, the bottom 6 or 7 or 8 teams that finished at the bottom of Class A, based on certain metrics, and I think you could use soccer as a measurement, wins and losses, point system. They can use basically even the point systems that they're using now. You would drop down to B.
Okay, the
top 4 or 5 teams in B would move up to A. Now, but you would also have a human element in that. For example, if you got a Class B school team that was full of, 18 seniors, and that's part of the reason that we're very good, you can make some adjustments to this process. But what I'm basically saying is, if you're in a historical powerhouse in Class B, and if you're winning Class B, or you're in the top 3 or 4 Class B every year, then it's time for you to move up to start playing Class A, because clearly your talent level, your programming, your culture, and the things that you've instilled within your school system have allowed you to play at such a high level that you're constantly at the top of the class. So why not move up and play teams of comparable talent and comparable skill and comparable facilities, and allow some of these other schools to move down and build their programs? I mean, I feel so bad for this coach at Benson. I felt bad for you, DB, because I know what it's like to try to build a program.
And I was probably whining to you back then too. So it's like,
yeah, but exactly. So it's hard to build a program as a coach and to instill confidence in your kids, and when you clearly know you know, DB, me and you have been athletes most of our lives, right?
Yeah.
As an athlete, did you ever once walk into a field knowing you had no chance? Ever once?
Nah, not too often.
Ever.
Not too often.
Exactly.
I have.
Never. And I'm not saying.
And we didn't win a game. We didn't win a game my junior year. We were 0-for, and I still felt like we were better than our record.
Exactly. But exactly. And I watched some of your games. You were still competitive.
Yeah.
Here, I guarantee some of these kids walk onto the field knowing, absent an absolute disaster, they don't stand a chance.
We played Benson,
That's not right.
and I appreciate the call, George. We played Benson 2 years ago. And
George, we very much appreciate all those thoughts. We've got another guy
on a Monday
who always has some thoughts. Usually joins us on Friday, but Mike Sauter is on the phone as well. Some would call him an expert in high school sports in the area. I would be one of those people. Sauter, you think George is wrong? Let's fire away.
Well, I just the competitive balance thing. You have to know, and Damon, you know this. This is the second year of the 2-year cycle of scheduling, and the NSA schedules the football. They make the football schedule, not basketball. That's up to the schools or conferences and whatnot themselves. But as far as football, the NSA does it, and frankly, I think Nate does a tremendous job, or did in this 2-year cycle, matching up schools before you get to district play, so the first 4 weeks of competitive balance on purpose. If you look at some of the schools, they're supposed to be playing schools that are, in the same competitive vein, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, they did that on purpose, like for a reason. And North Star Benson is look at the last 10 years. That's probably a decently competitive, balanced kind of game.
Let me ask you something. I understand the micro, but what about the macro of taking census into account of the numbers you're going to get out? Because you're right. It's not fair. It's not fair, and I hope he didn't feel like he was being critical of Nate per se. But Nate can't, because
head out of the sand.
But I'm saying it's not just a metro deal, right? So in its totality, if you individually don't want to keep this from happening, is taking census into account? Because I get Nate's point. On paper, he can't predict that not that many people are going to come out for football at Benson, that they're going to be making Facebook posts to get players to come out for football,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And I would also, but do you actually think this time around it's cyclical? Because this almost happened to OPS before Bob Dannenauer had the vision to put middle school football back in Omaha public schools. Remember, we were like, it was tough. It was a tough stretch for OPS in terms of football. I think this time it's different though, with the migration patterns for students. You see it in wrestling in small communities. Like, there's a lot of mobility.
Yeah, it's totally different. One, okay, OPS had to know that if we take the head coach from Benson and we give him the central job, which, hey, deserves it, or whatever, that can be up for debate for whoever wants to debate that. I don't care either way.
I remember I wanted a particular coach at North, and we weren't allowed to talk to him.
Right. But in this situation, you have, you had to have known that 17, 20 kids were going to transfer from Benson to Central and follow their coach. You kind of had, unless you just really aren't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest reason why that happened on Friday. That's one of the biggest reasons, is they let that happen. Basically, with that decision, you left Benson football in a really tough spot, at least to be competitive this year. Also, look at not the numbers in the school, I think I heard something like 150 kids, 150 boys in Benson play sports at all, total. So the demographics of the school have changed. But how do you go about classifications? Everyone's coming up with problems, but no one's coming up with a solution.
Well, I think some of the solutions were ones in which we're kind of debating, like is census an option? Is getting away from census enrollment an option? That's
How would you change it?
What do you mean? You can wait. Hang on, smart guy. You can wait You can wait to do scheduling for the most part for non-district games. You can have the dates set, but what is it feasible, do you think, once you know numbers out for your sport tentatively to report? Could you do it that way? Or is that too late in the game?
Could wait. Yeah,
let's say you don't do the schedule until a month out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you could wait till July to do it. I don't see why you couldn't.
Now we say that, and Nate and those guys may be like, dude, July, it's hard enough for week 0 with the schedule. Yeah. But the dates don't have to change necessarily. I mean, but would you send, is it any more advantageous to send Benson to, like, let's say, why not?
Or South Sioux or something?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, I don't know. It's a sticky problem, and it all. I'm going to go back to a couple years ago when they decided not to play fall sports. That was back then. I said it's going to take it puts OPS behind by 10 years, unless you're Larry Martin, right? And you just have it.
You know what? Everybody always uses Larry as the example. Larry had some lean years early too, right?
Well, so I was going to talk about Omaha North.
He did,
right?
like go look at Larry's first couple of years,
and go look at Omaha North before Larry got there. Right?
I'm well aware.
We're not that. Right. They're not talking about that much different situation than we are with Benson and Northwest and South and some of these other programs.
I'm well
so
aware.
It's not impossible. It's really, really hard. It's a huge lift, right?
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Here's another,
look what's happened to Central.
Here's another thing.
Right. Look what's happened to Burke.
Here, another thing here too is coaches are really hard to find right now.
Yeah.
Because you're getting a lot more. We always talk about the referee shortage. Well, there's a coaching shortage.
And you see that schools are now starting to make different allowances.
Yeah.
For who?
They don't have to be in the building.
Right.
And all that stuff. Yeah. Right. I'm more like come up with solutions. But don't knock the NSA because the scheduling thing, like their head's not in the sand. He did it on purpose. You look at kind of who's playing who. That's on for a reason. So, yeah.
Sauter, we appreciate.
Have a great Monday.
We appreciate the call. We appreciate you chiming in. More of the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla coming up next.
We will be back in 5 minutes. We will be back in 4 minutes. Things you wanted us to get to. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Cleanup on aisle 6.
It's the sports cleanup. We will be back in 3 minutes. We will be back in 2 minutes. We will be back in 1 minute. We will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Cleanup on aisle 6.
It's the sports cleanup.
Time for the sports cleanup. We've been heavy on high school football today. Lots to talk about, but we had some college football games this weekend too.
Yes, we did.
And
Clean up.
The one of the major things I wanted to get to today with you was you've kind of been sneaky like in Notre Dame this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to see the first glimpses of Sam Hartman in a Fighting Irish uniform. I know the competition is kind of what it is, right?
But there is something to be said for doing what you're supposed to do.
Right. There is. Absolutely. And Notre Dame certainly did that. It's also just because of play style, it is a little hard to blow Navy out because you don't get that many plays off. I think Notre Dame ran like 57 plays in that game, which is not a lot. But what were your kind of initial thoughts? Did it provide any sort of confirmation to what you thought you might see from Notre Dame this year?
Well, they appeared to be balanced.
Yeah.
Right. And, I think they'll be better defensively at the end of the day, even though they were pretty good. Only 126 yards rushing for Navy, I think, net, and 46 passing. And I know Navy's starting over without Kenny Niamatalola at the helm. But, 19 was Hartman, 19 to 23.
23, yeah.
They ran the ball for 8 yards per. They didn't do anything to disappoint.
Right.
I couldn't really call them a dark horse, right? I mean,
they're top 15.
They're top. Yeah, I was going to say 13, 14.
Yeah.
So couldn't really call them a dark horse. I just felt like
that's a national title dark horse, though. If you like them for the playoff, that's outside of the group.
Yeah, for sure. It won't be anywhere near as much fun as if it's Texas Tech, because that's
your other one.
That's my real dark. That's like the legit dark horse. But there are two teams that I think have good pedigree that I think are getting overlooked amongst national pundits, and it's Notre Dame and it's Clemson.
Clemson's interesting, right? Because we think Clemson was worse than they were last year.
Well,
right?
I mean, at the end of the day, it seems like those are two teams that I definitely
like. We sort of think Clemson was this because what was it? 2 years ago, they lost 3 games, 4 games, something like that.
I mean, full disclosure, I have more confidence in Klubnik and Clemson and Riley at the helm as an OC, especially with that defense, than I do McCord or Brown at Ohio State.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, man, Ohio State's
we act like seriously though.
I don't know about Ohio State, man. I really don't.
But look at the love they've gotten.
Well, yeah.
A lot of people have them ahead of Michigan, and I'm like, how?
Yeah, I don't know about their tackles on offense. I don't know about McCord. And listen, if you're kind of iffy on the offensive line,
I get they have the best offensive player in the country, probably.
Absolutely.
Not non-quarterback for sure.
Yes. Maybe the best non-quarterback player in the country. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. is that dude.
I wish you could have seen him up close.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
He not built anything like his dad.
Yeah.
His dad was kind of diminutive.
His dad was kind of this small guy, not impressive physically, really.
Yeah. And I wouldn't he's not super imposing. But he's long and lean.
Yeah.
Like he's long.
In a way that his dad just was not at all.
I mean, that's despite the fact he had on $10,000 worth of. I'm not kidding you.
Worth of shoes?
Between his shoes, his watch, his suit, and his purse.
Oh, he had it all?
$10K.
He was decked out, huh?
Without question.
I'm really Ohio State's a super interesting team this year. Clemson is super interesting this year, especially because of all the love Florida State's getting.
All these teams don't have quarterbacks that are proven.
Yeah.
Right.
Ironic.
Hartman is actually
he's a proven. Not at Notre Dame, but he's a proven commodity.
Bama doesn't have one. Ohio State doesn't have one. Georgia doesn't have one. And we give them the benefit of the doubt. You know who does? LSU.
Michigan.
FSU. Michigan.
And I'm not even 100% in on McCarthy.
I kind of am more than I'm not. Like if you ask me to stand on a side of the fence, I'm on the believer side.
Here's what I'm at with McCarthy. Can he replicate what he did last year? Absolutely. Can they win a national championship with what he did last year? I don't think so. I think he has to take a step.
So we don't.
Is that fair?
Well, kind of. But remember, his opponents so far aren't as dynamic at the quarterback spot. So maybe the willingness to have to make big plays. Because he was even outplayed by, I almost said Dalton. Dalton is the other weird-haired guy that played at TCU with Max Duggan. So he may not have to be as dynamic. Because remember, he's going against.
And to be fair,
he's going against two guys that are going to start for their franchises as rookies and Young and Stroud.
Yeah, you're right. I just there's a part of me that can't shake the 2 pick sixes against TCU.
Yeah.
Like that's really prominent in my brain right now.
And Klubnik turned it over a couple times in the spring game.
So I think JJ McCarthy and Michigan are a better bet than McCord and Ohio State.
Well, yeah. Plus, you got the two-headed monster at running back. They've got a really good. I
trust their lines.
They got a Sunday tight end.
I trust their lines way more than I trust.
And
Ohio
they have
State's
the most
lines.
depth along their defensive line of any team in the country.
Yeah. So frankly, I trust Harbaugh more than I trust Day. I just do.
At this point.
Yeah, I think
he's won the last 2 against Day.
And listen, when Day took over, there was a part of me that's like, we don't know if this guy's a good head coach or not. And we didn't, right? That's fair. He was an unknown.
He sure does win a lot for a guy that gets some scrutiny.
He does win a lot, but he also was put in just about the best position you could possibly be put in.
You know why I think Nebraska fans kind of thumb their nose at Day a little bit?
Why is that?
Even though we would love to
His
be
track
him,
record's incredible, yeah.
It's the fourth quarter against Nebraska and Lincoln. I mean, did you have any idea what Ohio State was doing a couple years ago in Lincoln in that game?
No.
It was almost like they were trying not to win.
Yeah. It's
so, and I think that sticks in the craw, not in the craw. That's a bad term because that leaves like you just can't get over it. But I think they just remember the fact.
It's like the JJ McCarthy 2 pick sixes. I have a hard time getting past that in my memory. It's the same thing with Nebraska fans and Day. They have a hard time getting past that in their memory. I guess I just wonder how much of what we
And Frost got off to the good start against them in Columbus too.
Right. I just wonder how much of what we saw early, especially from Day, because we're in what year is he in now?
I think this is fourth.
Year 4.
Yeah, what is he? He's 44-5, right?
Yeah, incredible, right? Like there's no complaints.
Something
there,
like that.
Obviously. I wonder how much of it is kind of like the Larry Coker effect.
Oh, I don't know about this. Is so 18. This is 6. Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this is 6.
So this is your 6.
That went fast.
Not a good example.
18 didn't really count because there were only the 3 games.
I thought we were all. I was thinking we were in like year 4.
Well, this is really his 5th year.
We're deep enough in that it's probably not that. But there was a part of me that's like, hey, if you inherit the best situation in the world, like how good of a football coach do you have to be to not take it off the rails?
And he's 2-3 in the postseason.
You know, and so, and again, that's a great problem to have, to be, 2 and 3 in the playoff.
1,000%.
Like,
1,000%.
That's a really good problem.
Yeah, that was in the Fiesta, the Sugar.
He's not playing in
the Rose Bowl. And I mean, he was, even when it says Peach Bowl last year, that was because that was the rotation.
Yeah, it's not like he's playing in a lot of Duke's Mayo Bowls. He's not getting cheese that's dumped on his head at the end of these games, right? So, we're nitpicking here with Ryan Day, but when you're talking about college football playoff and national champions, you kind of have to nitpick a little bit. You mentioned Notre Dame as kind of your not so dark horse. You mentioned Texas Tech as your dark horse. I'm curious what you think about Florida State, because they have a quarterback that we think is really dynamic in Jordan Travis. They've got one of the best defensive players in the country in Jared Verse. They've got a nice running back in Benson. I think I like Mike Norvell. I think he's a really smart guy. They finally got their offensive line back in order with Alex Atkins, taking that thing from being disastrous even under Jimbo. Last couple of years under Jimbo.
They're so dynamic outside the numbers.
They really are.
I mean, that wide receiving core is spectacular. But at the end of the day, I like FSU. I just don't like them more than I don't like them more than Clemson.
Okay.
And 2 teams from the ACC aren't getting in.
No.
So that's really what it boils down to.
So does it matter? It's whoever wins in the ACC title game, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter who wins in the regular season. Yep. It's whoever gets the rubber match, right?
Without question.
That's
the difference between FSU and Clemson. I like FSU. I like FSU a lot.
Yeah.
I just don't like them
as
much as
quite.
Clemson defensively has a chance to turn your lights
a little
up.
more dynamic.
Yeah.
That is your War Horse Sports Cleanup. Coming up next, we've got Adam McClintock from Matrix Analytical here on DB and Ravi Lulla.
That's a show. That's us too.
The show will be back in 4 minutes. The show will be back in 3 minutes. The show will be back in 2 minutes. The show will be back in 1 minute. The show will be back in 30 seconds. Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Hartman now under center on the left hash, turns, gives to Estime right side, easily into the end zone, touchdown Notre Dame.
A new set of downs as the ball is dropped. Caleb picks it up, trying to make something happen. Throws long, and it is complete. And at the 30, the 20, the 15, 10, 5, and touchdown USC, Taj Washington.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities out in central Nebraska. We are here live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill.
If you feel a little dinged up, right, maybe that high school segment has got your head spinning, folks kind of in their feels a little bit, or it's, you know, the fact that I like Clemson over Florida State and Michigan over Ohio State, man. Make sure you stop out and see the fine folks at Dingman's. So good at what they do. I will be seeing them sooner rather than later, especially for that oil change. The thermostat light, man, is bugging me. 4 great locations, family owned and operated. Visit dingmanscollision.com.
Especially with all those miles you're putting on the car this week.
Man, I know, wear and tear. Not like this guy.
A guy that puts in the work for sure is our friend Adam McClintock from Matrix Analytical. Adam, how you doing today?
Good, guys. How we doing?
We're good. We're good, man. Just I'm pretty excited. It's game week. How about you?
Oh, same here, man. We got high school kicking off. We got college kicking off this weekend. NFL in a couple weeks. Temperatures are still up, but they're supposed to come down, right? So let's ride this thing in the fall and get it going.
You're seeing a lot of your budding stars that you guys help schools with. Coach Lulla. Ravi brought up one earlier, and Coach Cooper, with top guys being young guys, but you like a few guys on this staff with the folks at Analytical, don't you?
Oh yeah. Barthel's, EJ Barthel's one of them. Cooper's one of them. This is a young staff, extremely young staff. I think it's the 13th youngest staff in the country, but for all schools whose staffs average less than 3 years of experience per coach, at the FCS level, Nebraska is rated our highest. So they're young, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot in this case. They're very, very, very capable.
Adam, I'm curious, when you're looking at these coaches, because they don't have a ton of track record just because of their age, what are some of the things you're looking at to kind of gauge their ability with a staff like Nebraska's?
Well, for guys like for example, EJ Barthel, right? He's you look at what he did at UConn. Look at what that running back room did the year before he got there, and what it produced the year after he got there. We like to see immediate results, immediate improvement, immediate turnaround there, and he absolutely did that at UConn. So those are the type of things we look at for coaches who have been at their respective title for 3 years or less. You want to see that instant progression and instant impact when they walk into a room.
How do you parse through, like, let's take a couple, for instance, the style. How do you factor in like style of play for Minnesota, who like may play a little bit different? We know about Monroe coming over from Syracuse to help out that staff defensively with Minnesota. When you're looking at data like that to just spit out numbers, how do you work the variables like that?
Honestly, the way we look at it is, okay, how does that for example, a defensive backs coach, I don't care what scheme you're running, all right? When that ball is in the air, what is happening? Okay, what is happening when that ball is in the air? Is it completed? If it's completed, how many yards after the catch is that receiver getting? If is it batted down? Is it intercepted? What happens every single time that ball is in the air with your defensive back room? That's what we look at. See, and we're numbers guys. We're not going to try to dabble into the schemes, the ins and outs, X's and O's, and everything. We can tell you what your position group did, with the talent you have versus the talent that you were going against on your schedule. But we're not here to try to play coach. Those guys get paid lots of money for that.
Pause for concern, or just part of the data that Nick Monroe is the co-defensive coordinator at Minnesota, who is familiar but doesn't know everything about Tony White.
It's still different personnel packages there.
Exactly.
There's different guys running, different guys out there. They're going to be trotting out on the field. So while there is a little bit of a concern, I think you'd be remiss if you didn't think there was a little bit of concern there with the familiarity that was possibly going to be there. But at the same time, it's not the same kids out there. I mean, this is Nebraska, Minnesota. This isn't Syracuse, Purdue. So let's just put it out on the table and see where the chips fall. And I think Tony White will be just fine.
Adam, I'm curious. There's obviously some higher profile transfers. I'm thinking DJ up at Oregon State. I'm thinking Sam Hartman, who we saw at Notre Dame. But of the transfer quarterbacks and kind of the numbers that you guys run, is there a bigger upgrade anywhere in the country than Iowa getting Cade McNamara?
Well, we really like Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman going to Notre Dame was probably one of our biggest, one of the biggest upgrades that we had in our system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of played out. I know Navy, that's not necessarily the juggernaut on defense up there that they have, but I think everybody was able to recognize what Sam Hartman in Notre Dame's offense is going to look like. Now, McNamara at Iowa, that's going to be interesting because, Iowa for years, and in our system, our coaching grades reflect that. They have the best special teams coordinator in the country rated in our system. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a top 5 defensive coordinator in the country as well. Offensive side of the ball doesn't really rate in the top tier. So they win games a certain way. And if McNamara can come in there and help boost that third phase up from what it's been, they're going to be something to tangle with.
When you're taking a look at parsing through kind of rapid fire, the predictions between Wisconsin and, like, let's say Iowa, head coaching experience, is it simply fickle?
In our grading system, we like Fickle over Ferentz. Fickle is he's a very good coach. That coaching staff at Wisconsin, they really knocked it out of the park when they created that thing. So I know people are kind of hung up on Phil Longo and how that's going to work in Madison, but he's going to run the ball, and they're going to be just fine. In fact, I think my model has Wisconsin winning the West. So for all those people who are super worried about that, yeah, it's going to be a change. It's going to be different, but I wouldn't expect this Wisconsin to necessarily fall off a cliff.
Adam, I'm curious. We were just talking about Florida State versus Clemson and who we liked better. What are your numbers telling you on who has the edge there in the ACC?
Well, what the model says is probably it's not necessarily the popular take, but it has Clemson winning that thing by a little ways. They just hired one of the better offensive minds in college football in Riley. Lincoln Riley's little brother, Garrett Riley. He gets in there, and they still have that defensive mantra that they have, and they even had last year. I mean, people look at Clemson's team last year, and they want to poo-poo it like it was some 4-8 team out east that's just going to absolutely collapse this year. That wasn't the case. They had problems on offense. Okay, that's solved. They still have talent on offense. Clemson's going to be just fine. In fact, I think they probably get to the playoffs.
Are you buying? What's your model tell you about Illinois? I think that's truly a swing game for Nebraska, even though it's on the road.
Oh, Illinois. Brett Bielema is a guy that's going to be a thorn in a lot of sides in the Big Ten for years to come at Illinois.
Oh, great.
That's one of Nebraska's toss-up games, and the model has it going Illinois' way by less than a point right now. That's going to be a tough game. I've had people reach out to me and ask, okay, what is the road to 8-4 is what number I've seen people throw out to me, and my model first off likes Nebraska to go 6-6. But if you're going to get to 8-4, you have to win this first game at Minnesota, and you have to win that game at Illinois. If you win those two games, 8-4 looks very, very, very doable.
Do you get the sense that folks that are always picking your brain are more interested in Colorado than Minnesota? Because in my sphere of influence, that's kind of driving me crazy. Maybe that's the hard-headed coach in me, but you can't do anything in Boulder until you get through Minneapolis.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but I know there's been a lot of bluster from out west, the Boulder area, but that's not a good football team right now. That's not the team you need to be worried about. You need to be worried about those guys up at Minneapolis that have kicked your head in the last 4 years. Let's go up there and let's compete and win that one first, and then we can talk about all the message board talk from Boulder.
How about How about Calais McManus kind of making the switch without the consistency in the ground game? It seems like their best 3 offensive players all catch the football.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm anxious. I'm just as anxious as anybody else is to kind of see how that plays out, because without Ibrahim back in the backfield from Minnesota, I'm not really for sure they're going to know what to do.
Yeah.
But although with all his injury time that he missed, they have a stable back there, and they've had really good running back development. So it might be next man up.
That is Adam McClintock, college football professor.
Appreciate you,
Matrix
buddy.
Analytical. We appreciate you as always. This has
Thank
been the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla, brought to you by Dyer Law, 402-393-7529 or DYER.law. Make sure you go check them out. We'll be back tomorrow.